In an era in which the Ultimate Fighting Championship has 600 fighters on roster and stages over 40 events per year, even the most hardcore fan can find their attention straying thanks to the seemingly endless parade of fight night cards with limited divisional relevance and widely varying skill. A few times a year, however, the clouds part and give way to a massive pay-per-view extravaganza that demonstrates why the UFC is the industry leader. This Saturday's offering from its home base of Las Vegas is the latest reminder that while it certainly does not have a monopoly on worldwide MMA talent, the UFC, more than any other single promotion, has the capacity to put the best fighters in the world on display for our viewing enjoyment. Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 290, Bo Nickal versus Tresean Gore. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. Joining me, as usual, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, this main card is so stacked that the main event, Bo Nickal versus Tresean Gore, is followed by 4 post-lims, 2 of which are for belts. I mean, tell me how excited you are for this card.
It's so funny because we talk to each other so much that I know your jokes so well that as soon as you said, hey, we'll get started, I got a little intro. I know a Bo Nickal joke was coming. When you said the clouds come apart, I think you were going to say, and then Bo Nickal ascends down from heaven to grace us with his presence. Imagine this is the first time you've ever watched one of our shows and you just click this and you're like, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah, the clouds part, down comes Bo Nickal. He's from Colorado by way of Ohio, by way of Texas, by way of State College, Pennsylvania, by way of heaven.
By way of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Bethlehem. You know, the funny thing is, when making jokes, the guy's like a wicked hardcore born again Christian. He'd be mad if you heard this.
At least we're not saying he's from hell.
Yeah. There you go.
I mean, Tresean Gore might disagree by the time they're done, but we'll get to that fight when we get to it. Man, right out the gate. In seriousness, of course, this is UFC 290, Volkanovski versus Rodriguez, that has a fantastic featherweight title fight in the main event. The co-main event, a fantastic men's flyweight title fight between Brandon Moreno and Alexandre Pantoja. And generally speaking, in my opinion, a pretty damn impressive card. Give me a letter grade based on your anticipation for this one.
Yeah, it's so tough to grade this one because you have to compare it to, obviously pay-per-views, but also International Fight Week. Like, this is supposed to be the big pay-per-view of the year. That said, I'm going like an A-. Like, it's a great card. I would probably give it a solid just A. Like, A+ is impossible. A+ you're not going to get. A+, you're going to have to be stacked all the way. The prelim match is going to have title implications, fight pass prelims and
the couple of cards they gave us that had 3 title fights on them, I was comfortable giving an A+ on it.
But I'm saying A+ is extremely hard to get. I would have given it an A if Sean Brady didn't fall off the card.
Brady versus Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, to have that relegated to your prelims says a lot about your card.
But the top 2 fights, the main event and the co-main event, they're not going to get, the way I always tell by the excitement of a card is the amount of text messages I get from casual fans for prediction advice, which I don't get much anymore because I'll send them a 2+ hour preview from us and go, here you go. Help me with the clicks. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And all you guys too watching, please do that. But it won't get that stuff because I like Brandon Moreno versus Pantoja, like Moreno Pantoja, that's not the biggest names. Volkanovski's kind of put himself in a star category, and Rodriguez, if he beats him and how he beats them and does something spectacular, obviously could. But technically speaking, breaking down film, looking at these guys, to me, this is 2 of the most exciting matchups the UFC could make in any weight class. So that alone, I think it gives it an A.
Yeah, completely agree. The 9 fight prelims, 9 fights, 5 of them have at least 1 undefeated fighter in them. And we're talking about
like that.
We're talking about some of the more interesting up-and-coming prospects. Obviously, Josiah Harrell, who steps in on a week's notice to face Della Maddalena, the UFC grabbed who they could, but Tatsuro Taira is about as exciting a prospect in those lighter divisions as the UFC has right now, and at least as currently constituted, he's in the curtain jerker. Like, same for Cameron Saaiman at 135. He's way down there on the early prelims. there's not a whole lot of junk on this card. You went mute, Keith.
Sorry, some of that might have to do with timing. To be in the Asian market, so some of that might be.
Yeah.
But yeah,
just good stuff. But as we've alluded to a few times, there are 14 fights here. So unless you got any other general thoughts about the card, let's dive right into these.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say, so we're taping this Sunday night, July 2nd. Obviously, if Americans know what I mean by it's July 2nd, the week of July 4th, which means there's gonna be fireworks. My neighbors have we are the asshole street. And I'm not blaming my neighbors because I'm not gonna say that I was outside letting off fireworks blocking the road. I'm not gonna, but there's rumors that I did. I'm not gonna admit to that. But yeah. So my dog's barking every once in a while. So if that happens, I apologize. We have the dog as far away from here as possible. But if you hear it, I apologize. Dude,
I am in Texas. The fireworks are already going, and by the actual night of July 4th, there will be people shooting automatic weapons into the air like I'm in fucking Fallujah.
Yeah. You're in Texas. It's just like, oh, it's Thursday night. Let me shoot off some fireworks. It's
yeah. I mean, fireworks are the state flower of Texas. I may be the only person on my court that doesn't own an AR style rifle. I'm not joking.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And now we just luckily nobody has your address. You'd be the only neighbor who just got robbed.
Well, no, it's cool. It's kind of like herd immunity from house break-ins because nobody's gonna break into a house in my neighborhood. There's a 90% chance that the homeowner has an AR.
Yeah, in case they picked the wrong house. Shit, I thought this was Ben Duffy's house.
Yeah, I thought this was Ben Duffy's house, but yeah.
Yeah, click.
First up at UFC 290, at least as the card is set up as of the beginning of fight week, is a 130-pound catchweight contest between Tatsuro Taira and Edgar Chairez. Taira, the 23-year-old from Japan, is a perfect 13-0 in his mixed martial arts career. He's a perfect 3-0 since joining the UFC a little over a year ago. Appeared most recently back in February at UFC Fight Night Lewis versus Spivak, where he triangle armbarred Jesus Santos Aguilar in the first round. That was his second submission win in a row. He is definitely one of the more exciting lighterweight prospects making his way up the UFC ladder. And he will be facing off against Chairez. 27-year-old Mexican is 10-4 overall. This will be his UFC debut. He competed on the Contender Series last August, but lost a decision there. So went back to the regionals, won a fight in Mexico, won a fight here in Texas in the Fury Fighting Championship back in March. That got him the Fury flyweight title and a call up from the UFC where he steps in, and he steps in as a prohibitive underdog on a card full of them. I should have mentioned this off the top, but this card, for 14 fight card, I think there's only one fight on the entire card that doesn't have at least a 2-1 favorite on it. And there are several fights here that are among the widest lines of the year.
Sorry, only one fight isn't a 2-1 favorite?
Only one fight on this card, I believe, doesn't have at least a 2-1 favorite, and it's between two guys that already fought to a draw, so it kind of makes sense. Like Crute versus Menifield is a pick'em. As we work our way up, we'll find out if I'm remembering wrong, but the main card is full of 3-4-1 favorites and greater.
Even Moreno and Pantoja, is it more than a 2-1?
We'll get there when we get there, man.
Wow.
I was surprised over and over again putting.
I don't look at the odds, so
yeah,
that's great.
Keith doesn't look at the odds, so I'll actually spring a few guess quiz questions on him as we go. But here, Taira -900, Chairez +600. You and I talk about this over and over, where there's always a little more hype attached to being completely undefeated. I mean, Jack Della Maddalena lost 2 fights at the beginning of his career, and he's 14-0 since then. If those first 2 losses had been amateur fights and he turned pro after them, he would have a whole different level of hype right now. We'd be talking about, him in the same breath as Khamzat Chimaev and Shavkat Rakhmonov instead of those 2 guys, and then Jack Della Maddalena. That's the magic of the 0 in the L column. Taira has it, and he's almost a 10-1 favorite here. Yeah. Let me ask you a general question before I ask you for your analysis on a 10-1 favorite fight.
10-1 favorite.
Yeah. Is Taira a future title contender at 125 or 135 in your opinion, or is the balloon going to pop when he loses one?
So I hate saying is he going to win the title? Is he going to challenge for the title? Because there's a group of guys that could have challenged for the title that never got that shot, but they were as good as the guys who have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'll say he's that ability. Like I always like to answer it more of, could he win the title one day? Does he have that ability? Because some people you say, does this guy have that ability? And I'd say no. Mm-hmm. Even guys I like. Does he have the ability? Absolutely. Like he could win the title one day. Am I picking that? It's hard. You're asking me. You asked me he's gonna win. Like it's like when an NFL quarterback gets drafted number 1 overall, and it's like, does he have the ability to? Yeah, he has the ability. Will he? Well, there's some of the greatest guys who have ever played the sport who didn't win a Super Bowl. Dan Marino and guys like that. And Taira's fucking good. like he was a kid that we liked a lot coming into the UFC, but he has exceeded my expectation. Like when I see him, every fight I see of him, I'm like more impressed and going, wow, I thought this guy was going to be like a top 25 flyweight, which is impressive. Then it's like, oh, I thought, well, he could crack the top 15. Then I'm like, what? This guy could win top 5. And now I'm like, this guy can win the title one day. Like, I think he's that good. He's a long and lengthy fighter, which right away helps him. He has a physique that very few guys in that weight class have. Very fluid, very controlled. He uses his length very well to pick apart from range. A lot of things I want to say. A lot of the things I'm saying right now is things we just said about him because we broke him down a couple times recently. His fights have been falling through for him, so I've already said these things about him. But fast hands, plus power. I love his kicking game, though he can throw some naked leg kicks. He does keep his chin a little too high in the air from my liking. That's something he needs to change. He's a above average wrestler, but he's brilliant when the fight hits the ground. Good top game. Patiently works, to pass guard. Transitions very well from position to position. Super slick back takes. Great submission game. He already has 7 subs in his career. He subbed his last 2 opponents in the UFC. Now, Chairez, I mean, this is a tough ask making a UFC debut. He's got that viral video that his last fight was one of the worst stoppages in MMA history, where he was choked the guy with I think it was a triangle choke. The guy passed out. Then he switches to armbar. His armbar about to break. He wakes back up, and the referee never stopped it. He has feasted. So that's how people, if you recognize his name, that might be how people that he has faced are not that good. Like he's feasted on some bums. Anytime he has fought anybody of note, he has lost. Now, technically, what I've seen him, he's got a nice jab. But he often throws single strikes. He throws a lot of kicks, but again, they're often naked leg kicks. I do like that he avoids a lot of strikes by L-stepping, but he's still pretty hittable, and that's because he lacks head movement. He doesn't dip to the side when you're L-stepping. He will wrestle, but he isn't a wrestler. I wouldn't call him that. He's a weak defensive wrestler. He's a submission threat. He has 6 subs in his career. He got a submission off his back in his last fight. He's never been to a decision, so that normally would make someone worried about cardio. But he did get a stoppage in the 4th round of his last fight, so it's a little like a deceiving stat. And he doesn't have to worry about going to decision in this fight because Taira's going to smash him. Taira is better than him everywhere. I think we see a club and sub. I think he's going to hurt him on the feet, and then I think he jumps on a submission. I'm going to say Taira finishes it in the very first round by submission.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Like you, I was excited about Taira coming in, but it was a tempered excitement because 1, he was so young, and 2, a fighter, one of my common narratives is when I see a jacked guy coming from Central Europe or Brazil, I want to see him through a couple of USADA cycles before I decide where they're going to fall. When I see a kind of brilliant freewheeling grappler come over from Shudo, I'm always a little, let's see if this works on Americans, because a lot of times, just because of the way kind of Shudo gyms and Shudo culture are, where it's a very entertaining form of grappling, when you get to a little bit grouchy or more positionally sound Western, ground fighters, it just doesn't work. I was super excited back in the day for Hatsuhioki finally to come over to the UFC, and just turned out that a lot of that stuff didn't work when the other guy didn't want to play Shudo. That has not been the case with Tatsuro Taira. And unlike people like Hioki. He has obvious plus athleticism, good size for the division, and really sharp striking to go with it. I'm with you. Like, I've gotten more excited about him with each like successive win, where a lot of top prospects I get a little more concerned each time. It's like, okay, I see when this guy loses for the first time how it's going to happen, you know. Well, I mean, Sean Brady's a perfect example. It's like, okay, Brady's still undefeated, but his gas tank's clearly a problem, and as soon as he finds someone that's really hard to wrestle, he's going to get tired, and that's how he's going to lose his first fight. And sure enough, he ran into Bilal Muhammad. With Taira, it's the opposite. I've gotten more excited with each successive fight. This fight is at 130-pound catch weight. That is a concession to Chairez, not to Taira, but it is worth asking at what point Taira is going to decide it's time to move up to 135. Like, I don't think he might not be built for flyweight in his late 20s like he is in his early 20s, but the version of him right now, I couldn't say it any better than you said it. He's better than Chairez everywhere. He's getting better. It seems exponentially from fight to fight, where Chairez, from what I've seen of him in Combate as well as Fury, he has the same couple of major flaws that make him a fun fighter, but a limited one. I hate to be boring, but I see it exactly as like you do. I think there's a submission, and I think it is preceded by Taira busting him up pretty good on the feet. Give me Taira by first round submission as well, though. If he gets a clean knockout on the feet, or, you know, a TKO on the ground where he just chases him down and pounds him out, that wouldn't surprise me too badly either. Next up at UFC 290, we head to the lightweight division for a matchup between Kamuela Kirk and Esteban Ribovics. Kirk, the 29-year-old Hawaiian fighting out of Arizona, is 12-5 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC as a veteran of season 3 of Dana White's Contender Series. He lost on the Contender Series, went and won a few more fights in LFA before getting the call up to the UFC. He debuted with a win over Makwan Amirkhani, came back last March and lost via second round submission to Damon Jackson. So here he is about 15 months later, looking to get back on track, and opposing him in that endeavor will be Ribovics. The 27-year-old Argentinian is 11-1 overall. His lone loss came in his UFC debut back in March at UFC 285, where he dropped a unanimous decision to Loic Rajabov, much to the delight of an entire stadium full of the population of Tajikistan. So two gentlemen still looking for their, or two gentlemen looking for a win in the UFC, coming in off of losses. The favorite here is Ribovics. He is minus 200, Kirk plus 170 on the comeback. Keith, this may be that rarest of UFC cards where there's nobody on the cut list afterwards. And this is the only fight where I think it's still, no, I take that back, because obviously Chairez, but this is the only fight on the card where both guys still kind of have the onus on them to prove they belong in the UFC. Who proves it here and how?
Yeah, this is a tough fight to pick. I'm glad that it's second on the card, because when I first looked on the fight, it was way higher up on the card, and I was like, why the hell is this like headlining the prelims or whatever it was? It was way up. It was above on the card, so I'm glad that it is since been adjusted. You know, Kirk, he's a low output striker that tends to be looking to land the perfect shot. He does have some power. I like that. He can get inside and unload some hard shots. I like his kicking game. He kicks to all parts of the body, teep kicks, but he doesn't really check leg kicks. He's open to them. He likes to battle in the clinch, where he lands some good power shots. He's got some takedowns there. I like his trips. He also has a reactionary double where, if you pressure him, he'll drop on your hips. Strong ground and pound. He's more of a BJJ practitioner than he is a wrestler, though. He's competed in some BJJ competitions. He can get subs in a lot of positions, but he's a really weak defensive wrestler. I mean, go back to like Makwan Amirkhani, who looks like he's absolutely shot. Amirkhani took him down 5 times. Because of his BJJ background, he struggles to get back up from bottom too. He kind of plays that game. Cardio is also a little bit of an issue for him as he slowed down late fights. I mean, the perfect example is the Damian Jackson fight. Like, Damian Jackson just mentally broke him. And that's what Damian Jackson does. Just keeps pressing the action. Now, Ribovics, I'm sorry I'm saying his name wrong. He's the plus athlete who he can fight out of both stances. Good output, nice jab. He attacks with combinations. He throws a lot of power shots, but he can be wild and reckless, which leaves him open to be countered. I mean, go back to the Contender Series fight. He was tagged in that fight. But in his UFC debut, he was way more controlled and looked like a much better fighter. He does hit very hard. He loves the flying knee, which I'm not crazy about. He isn't a strong wrestler. His takedown defense is pretty bad. But if he gets the fight to the ground, he's pretty good BJJ artist himself. Pretty good at scrambles. He can catch a submission. He loves his Kimura. Like, he hits the Kimura from every position, and he's threatening that. It seems like every fight he's in. This is a really tough fight because I'm not very high on either guy. I've flip-flopped, and it was one of these ones, guys. I've been traveling on vacation, both from Sherdog and my other job. So some of these fights I haven't dug in as much. So this is one of the ones I kind of wish I did look a little bit more because I flip-flopped. I'll go with I have no confidence in my pick. I'll go with who'd you say the favorite was?
The favorite is Ribovics, and he's a 2-1 favorite. He's minus 200.
Yeah, wow. I was leaning him, but like, that's crazy. Like, why is he a 2-1 favorite? Like, what does he do that's really good? I mean, what does either one of these guys do that's really good?
And it's worth noting, and I should have mentioned off the top, this is Kirk moving up to 155 from 145, but I don't think it's going to tell much because I think they're going to come out and be about the same size anyway. Ribovics is a little taller and skinnier. Kirk was not a small featherweight. Like, I think they're going to look about the same size.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll take Ribovics by decision, but I have zero confidence in that. Like, if you're betting it, I don't mind like going the other way on that and taking, if you like to play the odds, I wouldn't mind taking Kirk on that. But I'll take Ribovics. I'll say split decision.
I am with you here in that this feels like a much closer fight than the odds would seem to indicate. I like the idea of Kirk moving up. I'm always partial to fighters moving up unforced. Like, they haven't blown weight. They haven't, needed the towel or the hoop. Just they decided that they would feel better a weight class up. Just ask someone like, Robert Whittaker, who's fighting later on this card, how well that can work out for you. And who knows? Maybe he'll be more durable at 155. Maybe like the thing that happened against Jackson will be less likely to happen to him here. But I'm going to lean towards the underdog here. What I know what Kirk's flaws are, and you laid them out perfectly. He's a little too willing to concede bottom position and play BJJ off his back. And when he doesn't want to do that, he sometimes lacks the defensive wrestling to keep it from happening. I've yet to see Esteban Ribovics commit himself to a real good game plan to beat his opponent. So I don't know if he's the right guy to take advantage of that. I could see us having a wild fight here where even individual rounds are difficult to score, but give me the upset here. Like, at the very least, I think Kirk will have, durability and cardio to go 3 rounds here. I don't expect Ribovics to suddenly overpower him just because Kirk has moved up a weight class. That's not really Ribovics' game. So give me Kirk here, and I wouldn't be surprised by a split decision either, or one of those decisions where Kirk wins 2 rounds out of 3, but the judges can't seem to agree on which 2 rounds he won. Like, you get one of those. But yeah, I'll go with the upset here.
You know what, Ben? I'm going to change my pick. I think you convinced me, and I'll tell you why. I was thinking about him. He fought Damon Jackson, and Damon Jackson has this thing where he's going to tie you out, and he saw a flaw in his game, probably because of Damon Jackson, and says I probably have more energy at lightweight. Yeah, you know what? You convinced me. I want to switch my pick. I'm going to go split decision with Kirk.
All right, there you go. I've convinced Keith, and just so tune in for the recap if he gets to give me hell like when we both got it wrong. Either way, we both concede that this is a pretty tough one to call. We head now back to the flyweight division for a matchup between Shannon Ross and Jesus Santos Aguilar. Ross, the 34-year-old Australian, is 12-7 overall. He is 0-1 in the UFC. He competed on the Contender Series last summer. Actually lost on the Contender Series. Got the call up to the UFC for a short notice matchup with Klages and Rodriguez anyway in February at UFC 284. Got knocked out in less than a minute. Obviously, stepping in on short notice, he gets a mulligan on that one, and he gets his real first chance to kind of prove himself here against Aguilar. 27-year-old Mexican is 8-2 overall. He is also 0-1 in the UFC. He won on the Contender Series last August. That bought him a debut against Tatsuro Taira, whom we just talked about at UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Spivak back in February. He got triangle armbarred late in the first round. Generally speaking, I remember our preview for that, and Keith and I both said Jesus Santos Aguilar is probably going to get steamrolled by Taira, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's no good or doesn't belong here. And same as Ross, he gets his chance perhaps to prove he belongs. Odds heavily favor him. Aguilar minus 200, another 2-1 favorite. Ross plus 170 or so. And if you are enjoying this preview on audio format rather than watching us on YouTube, you just missed Keith giving his little shake of the head like, dude, what the hell?
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to diss like Aguilar. I'm just surprised he's a favorite, like 2-1 favorite. Anybody in the UFC. I mean, Shannon Ross is as low as they go in the UFC. So like I get it, him being the favorite, but I just like 2-1. I was wondering who was going to be the favorite before you announced it. So, do you want me to go first?
Yeah, please, if you don't mind.
As I already took it over. Like I said, like Shannon Ross, he's not a great athlete. I mean, he's flat-footed. He's a bit of a stationary target. Doesn't move, laterally away from his opponent much. He does take the ground though, marching forward. Good output. Uses a lot of feints to set up his shots. I'd say solid back boxing, fast hands, attacks with combos. He loves his overhand right. I love that he rips the body. He's got plus power. He loves to close the distance with a flying knee when his opponent's against the wall. That's when I actually like flying knees, where they can't kind of pull back. Generally speaking, I think that's a waste of energy, but when they can't really pull back, I think it's a good time. I'm just worried about his durability. I mean, he's been knocked out in back-to-back fights. He was hurt to the body in his last fight, dropped with a big body shot. He can wrestle. He's not much of a submission threat. But what I do like from what I've seen, his cardio is off the charts. Like he can go hard all 15 minutes. Now, Aguilar, he's just short, stocky guy, high output striker. He likes to play the ball. He wants to march forward. He wants to make it a brawl. He throws some hard power shots. He can be really wild, almost knocking himself over with how wild he is. He's a very hittable guy. Like you can hit him, but he'll eat a shot to land one of his own. He's a strong wrestler though. Quick entries, though he will dive without setting up a shot. Like just kind of force a takedown that isn't there. He will look to throw hard shots when he's on top. Though he doesn't really posture up as much as I like. He kind of like ducks his head and kind of hammer fists too much. But when he can press his opponent against the cage, he's got some pretty good ground and pound. He does need to improve just his overall control. Like he kind of rushes it on the ground. I like his guillotine though. He's a very strong guillotine. It's kind of a specialist with it. He's got 4 subs just by guillotine. He won the Contender Series by guillotine, but some of that is because he's a weak defensive wrestler. These are 2 really low level talents. That's why I was like, I was surprised. If you asked me who was going to be the favorite, I would have guessed Aguilar, but I would have guessed like negative 130. I'm going to go with him because he's the better wrestler. He hits harder, and I think he has the more durability. But again, I have zero confidence in the pick. I'll say Aguilar by decision.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add here. Aguilar's flaws are well established at this point. He would seem to have more upside just because he is younger, he is more athletic than Ross. If either of these guys is still in the UFC 2 years from now, I'm almost certain it's Aguilar. But at the same time, he is up against a hard limit because he is so short and compact. He's basically Joseph Benavidez's size, and that really only works in the UFC if you have Joseph Benavidez athleticism and obviously like the incredible discipline that it took for him to develop the skill set he had, which, I mean, Aguilar is a good athlete, but discipline is not a word I would associate with his game in any wise. Ross, yeah, he he is what he is. I mean, I don't know what the Australian equivalent is of like a Midwest journeyman. Like I like there is no Midwest in Australia. Like nobody lives in the middle, but like animals that want to poison you and kill you.
That's it.
But
Crocodile hunter guy. That's it.
yeah, like I lean Aguilar here just because I have the feeling this is going to be a fight. I think it's probably going to go to decision, and I think it's probably going to be decided, like the individual rounds will be decided by just small moments of standout offense. Like, when you sit down at the end of each of these 5 minutes, it's like, well, Aguilar did that one thing and he did that one thing, and the rest of the round was just kind of a stalemate. So I lean Aguilar. I have the feeling that's the situation the judges are going to kind of be in, and I'm feeling the same way. Like, give me Aguilar to win 2 rounds out of 3 here, where neither guy really puts a stamp on the proceedings, but just Aguilar seems slightly busier and slightly more effective, and sways at least 2 out of the 3 judges on at least 2 out of the 3 rounds. We head now to the men's bantamweight division, where the undefeated Cameron Saaiman will look to stay that way against short notice opponent Terrence Mitchell. Saaiman, the 22-year-old from South Africa, is 8-0 overall. He is 2-0 since joining the UFC out of the 6th season of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought most recently back at UFC 285 in March, where he took a majority decision over Leomana Martinez. He will look to go 3-0 in the UFC, continue his rise up the bantamweight rankings. He had been scheduled to take on Christian Rodriguez. Rodriguez was forced out with an illness or injury within the last couple weeks, and in steps the debuting Mitchell. 33-year-old Alaskan is 14-2 overall. This will be his debut. He actually participated on the 24th season of The Ultimate Fighter, where he got lamped by Kai Kara France in his opening round fight, just got one-shotted in like 30 seconds. That sent him back to the regional circuit in Alaska, where he won the ACE. That's Alaska's basically second best promotion. And it sounds like I'm being snarky when I say Alaska's second best promotion, but AFC and ACE are both getting actually pretty good. Anyway, he won their flyweight title, and he gets the short notice call up here. Yet another fight on this undercard with a pretty wide line. Saaiman is minus 400, Mitchell plus 300 on the comeback. Keith, I like Saaiman as a prospect. I mean, when you're talking about somebody as young as Saaiman, I'm not even looking at, well, is he going to stay undefeated forever? It's like he's so young that he could lose 1 or 2 here, and it would just send him back to the back of the line, and he would still have all the upside in the world. The things I'm looking at more when I say I'm excited about Saaiman are his native tools, like his just native athleticism, which is impressive. And does he have the personality to stand out from the pack and be a star? The UFC needs that, and the lighter weight divisions definitely need that. And Saaiman's got a little bit of everything. I mean, he's aggressive. He's very much a finisher, at least on the level of opponents he's been fighting. And he's got that little bit of cockiness, that little bit of pizzazz on the mic that, if he keeps winning fights and gets into more marquee matchups, could propel him to stardom. I liked the Christian Rodriguez matchup. I like Mitchell as a replacement pretty much just as well, though. I mean, if this were Rodriguez stepping in, Saaiman would probably still be at least a 3-1 favorite here. So it's not like a huge step down. I'm glad that Mitchell's finally moved up to bantamweight, because the only thing I remembered about him on Tough was that he was impossibly like long and skinny and kept his chin right in the air, and Kai Kara France just, I mean, it was almost like watching a dude spike a volleyball, just straight overhead, squonk. Mitchell, definitely a finisher on the Alaska regional scene level. I mean, I think he's on like a 10 or 12 fight win streak, not counting his stint on Tough. And I think they're all finishes. Like it, he offensively, I think he's a pretty good tall man fighter in terms of striking offensively. Like when he can keep an opponent at range, he is good at doing damage at that range with like long straight punches, with kicks to multiple levels. But even at the regional level, it's been possible for shorter, more athletic fighters to crowd him and get inside the phone booth with him. But he's dangerous offensively there as well, like nasty with knees in the clinch. He has several like elbow knockouts that either were finished or started by like standing elbows. Just his problems to me are he's defensively porous, especially on the feet. Like he's been hittable even with the relatively low level people he's been fighting in Alaska. And as a guy that was a huge flyweight and obviously must have had a substantial weight cut, it's always a little alarming when you see a guy that never goes past the second round. Here, it may turn out that Mitchell belongs in the UFC and he may carve out a nice little career for himself, but I think Simon's going to butcher him on Saturday. I honestly, it probably won't look too different from a replay of the Mitchell versus Kai Kara-France fight on Tough. I mean, maybe not 30 seconds, but Saaiman is absolutely going to be able to get inside of Mitchell's like jab and take advantage of his, so-so footwork. Saaiman gets inside Mitchell, hands too low down, chin in the air. I think Saaiman probably just catches him with something nasty, standing, knocks him out. I'm going to say it happens in the first round here. Saaiman by first round knockout for me.
Yeah, I mean, this kid is good. I mean, you mentioned it. He's only 22 years old, and look how he batted Mana Martinez. I mean, that is a really good showing for a 22-year-old kid. He's a southpaw who flows.
Can I interject one thing? Mana Martinez is a good version of what Mitchell would like to do, like a long, rangy guy that wants to kickbox at range.
I think Mitchell would wrestle more than Mana, but I think that body, physique is, I'd say, similar, like a longer rangy guy. Try to use a natural, like God-given gifts, that,
Yeah.
Not to give away my pick, ain't gonna matter, Saaiman, he flows so well, flows between both stances, Muay Thai type striker that, if you stand right in front of him, he's just gonna batter you. Great volume. He's really fast. Attacks with combinations. His straight left is deadly. I like his check right hook. Has a lot of variety in striking. He sits on his punches, so he's drawing really good power, and he's not even in his power years yet. Strong kicks. I love the Alexander Slamenko type spinning back kick that he does. Underrated wrestler, good at winning scrambles. He does need to improve his takedown defense. Like that's probably the biggest flaw so far in his game, but he's hard to hold down. And he has really good cardio. Mitchell's 33 years old. You mentioned he's a long, lengthy guy. You said he wants to pick him apart at range. I don't think he has that talent. Like he's very raw for a guy who's already 33. Fights. He's a bit of a brawler. Fights like a wild man. Throws hard, hoping to land. He's a weak wrestler, but he does try to get the fight to the ground. He's more of a grappler. Some pretty good back tanks. He has a submission artist. He has 7 subs. And a good thing that he has is those long arms and long legs. So it's hard. Like if he gets on your back, it's hard to get him off. But then I'm with you. This is a mismatch. I think Saaiman avoids the power shots from Mitchell. I think he avoids the takedown attempts. And I think he smashed him with strikes. I can see him just kicking out Mitchell's legs. I see it happening until Mitchell's body eventually fails him. And I say that happens around second round. Give me Saaiman by second round TKO.
Next up at UFC 290, the light heavyweights take the cage as it is Vitor Petrino versus Marcin Prachnio. Petrino, the 25-year-old Brazilian, is a perfect 8-0 as a professional. He is 1-0 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He knocked out Rodolfo Bellato on the Contender Series last September. Actually, his second win over Bellato, poor guy. Debuted in the UFC in March at UFC Fight Night, Jan versus Dvalishvili, where he took a pretty one-sided unanimous decision over Anton Turkalj. Here he will look to make it 2-0 in the big octagon against Prachnio. 34-year-old from Poland, though, has been fighting out of the Netherlands for many years. 16-6 overall. He is 3-4 since joining the UFC as a multi-divisional standout in one championship. He's had a rocky start to his UFC run, but he's actually won 3 out of 4 leading into this fight. He fought most recently back in February on the Andrade versus Blanchfield Fight Night card, where he took a unanimous decision over William Knight. So he'll look to make it 2 in a row, 4 out of 5. Not favored to do so, of course. Petrino is minus 275. Prachnio plus 225. Keith, I mean, I'm going to toss this one to you first, but give me your overall temperature on Petrino. I mean, we've seen this type come to the UFC a lot in the last 3 years. He is built like a superhero. He's 25 years old.
Yeah.
And he's just been myrtleizing everybody. Like, is this guy the real deal, or is it just a guy that's not met the right opponent yet?
That's the tough question. I'll tell you right now, if he loses Prachnio, he's not the real deal. Like, you know, yeah, you mentioned he's 25 years old. The big thing that jumps out to him is how athletic he is. Very athletic, very explosive, quick hands, really nice snap on his shots. Throws a lot of hard power shots. I love that he throws hard shots to the body. I like that he looks for elbows when he gets inside the pocket, slicing guys up. Good step in knees, fast high kick, good overall movement. He has I'll get to two things that kind of a little concerning. He has been hurt in fights, several fights, which is the first thing that's a little concerning. He's an underrated wrestler. Probably doesn't get talked about because of how good of his striking is. Good entries, strong top control. He isn't a submission threat, so I guess that's the second thing, but that was what I was talking about. I like in his fight on the Contender Series against Bellato, where Bellato has his back, and Bellato's known for his ground game. He stayed really relaxed in that position. What the second thing concerned me is he gassed a little bit in his last fight, which is considering he was winning fairly easily. So that is probably something that's concerning if Prachnio can get him to gas out. Now, Prachnio, to me, he's the definition of like average UFC fighter. Like he's not good, but he's not bad either. He's okay. He might be a little. Yeah, he's not.
He lost to Sam Alvey and Mike Rodriguez.
Yeah, but he's won like 3 of his last 4 fights. Now we'll get to the William Knight in a second, but he's kind of karate background. He's kind of slow. He throws from his hips. He played it safe against William Knight. If he upped the volume, which has been an issue for him in past fights, but if he upped the volume, he might have got a stoppage in that fight, as William Knight was just not fighting him. He just didn't take a chance, and that's probably because of what you talked about. He's been knocked out in the past. He's a good point fighter. Got some pretty good kicks, nice light kicks. I go back to the Ike Villanueva fight where he stopped him with a body kick. He wants to be all the way out there, or he wants to be all the way in where he can kind of grind in the clinch. He's a bigger guy for the weight class, but he's a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, Felipe Lins looked like Anthony Knox against him. There's a deep wrestling reference for all you guys out there. See how many people get that without looking that one up. He's got a weak chin, though. I mean, Sam Alvey, you mentioned Sam Alvey knocked him out. Mike Rodriguez knocked him out. Oh, Megaman Ankalaev knocked him out, but okay.
Sam Alvey knocked him out in 2018, and the UFC booth talked about Sam Alvey only needing to find everybody's chin once for the rest of his career.
Yeah, he turned into Francis Ngannou.
Yeah.
I was going over this fight, and again, when you have 14 fights, you only have so many you can really dig deep into. And so real quick to refresh myself on Prachnio, I went to our preview of we have some boring previews when we go to fights. Then we have some ones that are pretty fun. Our William Knight one was pretty fun. But one thing we talked about was the cardio issues of William Knight. And we bash William Knight a lot. But I want to give him credit. He solved his cardio issue. By simply not throwing any punches. That's pretty good. He didn't gas out. So I'll give him credit for that. As far as this, who's going to win? I am worried about Petrino's gas tank, but he's better than Prachnio everywhere else. I think he gets inside of Prachnio's kicks. I think he laces up with his hands. I think he actually might get some takedowns himself. I think he eventually catches Prachnio's chin and ends the fight. Give me Petrino by second round TKO.
Yeah, on a card full of as many lopsided odds as this, I find myself asking as I'm analyzing a lot of them, okay, what avenues to victory does the underdog have here? just looking for upset potential, looking for a narrative that might surprise me. And here, it's hard to pick an underdog who doesn't throw enough volume, so it's going to be hard for him to win rounds unless his opponent makes a mistake or throws even less volume, like William Knight. And Petrino's most obvious standout quality, just his quick twitch athleticism and his power, do not match up with Prachnio's known deficiencies in chin and guarding that chin. So we're not a betting show, but if you're looking for upset value, don't look for it here, because Petrino could punch himself out in one round, get real tired, and Prachnio can make this a nail biter. But you don't want to be that guy that has money riding on this fight and is waiting to see if Petrino gets tired enough for Prachnio to give him trouble in the third round. Don't do that. It's not worth your health, guys. Don't do it. Give me Petrino here. I'm going to say he gets it done by. By first round knockout. He's going to come out like a house on fire. He's going to throw a bunch of haymakers. Prachnio is going to catch one of them on the face. We stay in the 205-pound division for a rematch that maybe some people were asking for. Apparently, the fighters at least weren't opposed to it, as it is Jim Crute versus Alonzo Menifield 2. Crute, 27-year-old Australian, is 12-3-1 overall. He is 4-3-1 in the UFC since joining out of the second season of Dana White's Contender Series. That one draw, of course, was in his most recent fight against Menifield. They clashed back at UFC 284 in February, fought to a majority draw thanks to a fence grab point deduction against Crute. Menifield, 35-year-old Dallas native, is 13-3-1 overall. He's 6-3-1 since joining the UFC as a two-time Contender Series alum. He fought on the first as well as the second season. He had been on a two-fight win streak before running into Crute in February. They had that majority draw. It was a pretty entertaining fight, and they decided to run it back. And you know what? I don't hate that, as two guys that aren't really... I mean, neither of them is really in the top 10, but neither of them is really on the cut list either if they lose here. So yeah, sure. Like it sets them both back by 4 months, but they get to sort it out, and we find out whatever we were going to find out in February. Odds here, as befits a very close fight that was a draw, it's pick 'em. I mean, if you go shopping for your specific book, you can find one of the guys a little ahead of the other, but neither of them is available plus money. So think of them as -110, -110. Keith, I know what Jim Crute has to do to win the rematch. Don't get caught grabbing the fence. Like, I would say don't grab the fence, but that's too much to ask of a UFC fighter above 155 pounds. So I'll say don't get caught grabbing the fence. What can Menifield do to win? Like, what adjustments? Which guy has easier adjustments to make to win this rematch?
I think Crute has easier adjustments. One thing he did, he tired himself out too. Like the big thing in that fight, he got tired really bad. And I mean, both guys got tired really, really bad. We haven't seen Crute get tired often. We've seen Menifield get tired. Like that's a trait of his. But that said, I'm not going to be confident in my pick. You just said that this is the one fight that it's a close betting line. You know, the first fight was a draw. Not to mention, like, it was, a fence grab and everything like this, and where things happened to, make it a draw. But Menifield almost knocked him out like 12 times. So, Crute is 27. So he's kind of finally in that prime age. He's a strong athlete. He likes to throw down in the pocket. And because he has, I don't want to say a granite chin, but like he has insane toughness. And he showed that against Menifield as he took like an ungodly amount of damage in that fight. I mean, Jamal Hill knocked him out and blasted him, but that's the champion in the weight class. So that is aged well. But he needs to have its granite chin because he's a very hittable guy for a guy who's at this high of the UFC. Like, he's not a title challenger, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that he makes a run, for him to have the defensive issues that he has is surprising. he has plus power. If he stays control, he's a pretty good pocket boxer. He's got a strong kicking game. I like his high kick. He also has good kicks up the middle, like teep kicks. But all I said about his striking, like he's a much better ground fighter. He can wrestle. He's got some good timing on his entries. He's got some good scrambles. He's good at like following the hip and winning the high head battle and cutting angles and doing all the little small things that wrestlers do well. He looks to advance position on the ground. He's got some strong ground and pound. But the big concern is how bad he gassed himself out due to his wrestling. I think some of that was credit to Menifield being a much better defensive wrestler at this point in his career than he was when he first started in the UFC. So, that's a big thing. But we've seen Crute wrestle and not gas out that bad. So, we'll see. Now, Menifield, he's a good athlete. He moves well. He fights behind high guard. He can be gun shy in the past, but that wasn't the case against Crute. He likes to work from the outside. Nice basic 1-2 combination. He hits really hard, lands some hard blows. Often he almost looks to land the perfect blow, and he can telegraph his shots by loading up too much. He can also overthrow his shots, which leads him to be countered. He has, we talk about he has power, and he knocked out a guy like Misha Serkinov. He probably should have knocked out Crute. There's some referees that would have jumped in and saved Crute from the damage he was taking. He's being a shorter guy for the weight class, he has struggled to get inside. Like I go back to the OSP fight where he really couldn't get around the length of OSP. He tends to fight in spurts too, and that's to conserve his energy. I like his kicking game. He's got some strong calf kicks. He's got a quick high kick. He's a weak defensive wrestler, though he's improved. You go back to like Devin Clark and the Misha Serkinov, they struggled to get him down. He's a weak overall grappler. He has gassed out in the past, but even that said, his gas tank is even though he gassed out in the fight against Crute, his gas tank has gotten better than when he first joined the UFC. So obviously when you look at these odds, you can see how hard it is. And I think if we had a room where you had 100 people making the pick, I think it's 50-50. Like that, I agree with the odds. I picked Crute to win the last time, and I'm going to go with Crute again. When I think of the biggest gap in skills to me, it's still Crute's wrestling versus Menifield's lack of defensive wrestling. I still think Crute can find ways to get the fight to the ground. Find ways to maybe pummel a little bit more and try to tire out Menifield there instead of just always like dropping on the hips. But I think this still leads Crute to win. I say he wins a decision.
Yeah, I have to make a correction in setting up this preview segment. I said that Crute had grabbed the fence. I don't know why I did that because it is, of course, Menifield who grabbed the fence.
Okay.
And
I was going with it. It was all right.
No, and I did the same back in February after they fought. I wrote a post-fight column, and I talked about, Crute grabbing the fence. I don't know why I get these two guys confused. They don't look alike, to say the least. Like, it's just weird. Like, I thought of the one guy and typed or said the other.
Right. I wasn't sure. I wasn't going to correct you, and I just wanted to go. And then I'm like, wait, what? And it's funny you say that because I was thinking about it, and I'm like,
no, it was totally Menifield.
Yeah, because Menifield had the huge 10-8 round.
Yep.
Where he almost murdered Crute.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I'll say is, yeah, both guys got tired in their first fight. Crute got more tired, or being tired compromised what he wanted to do more than what Menifield wanted to do. And honestly, I think Menifield was just more prepared to fight a 3-round fight because Menifield, that's the known thing. His fights often will go into the 3rd round, and he's used to being tired at that point. And to whatever point his cardio is fixable, he's fixed it, but at least he's made adjustments. He fights in the 1st round as if he might have to fight a 3rd round and tries to manage it and leave something in the tank. Where Crute, going into the Menifield fight in February, he hadn't gone past the 1st round in like over 4 years, like not since the Paul Craig fight. He'd had a bunch of 1st round finishes one way or the other. And even though obviously you're in training camp, you're training for a 3-round fight or a 5-round fight, there's a difference between training for a 3-round fight and training really expecting to have to go 3 rounds. And there may have been part of Crute that was like, this thing's going to be over one way or the other in 5 minutes. I think that alone like coming back to this fight going, okay, I should have won this fight, except I gassed out. Gave him more to go back to the drawing board with. Add to that, he is a lot younger than Menifield. If the additional 5 or 4 or 5 months makes a difference to one guy or the other, it probably benefits Crute more than Menifield. So yeah, I'm leaning in Crute's direction as well. I'm thinking he maybe completes those takedowns, does some damage on the ground. It's surprising to me that Crute is still just 27 years old. He's been in the UFC long enough that it just feels like he should be older. He just has more fights in the UFC. He's been around longer. It feels like he should be older. He's been fighting some top guys. I mean, he fought Anthony Smith and Jamal Hill back to back. Like top 5 fighters back to back. It's weird to think that he's still developing because I think of him as just such a known quantity here. But yeah, give me Crute to come out ahead here. I expect another close fight. But yeah, give me Crute to make the adjustments, maybe get clean takedowns, get takedowns in the middle of the cage, do some damage on top. I could see him tapping out Menifield or pounding him out on the ground, but that's not going to be my pick. Give me Crute to win the first 2 rounds and hold on for the victory here. We go from some of the heaviest fighters on the card to some of the lightest ones as strawweights Yazmin Jauregui and Denise Gomes take the cage. Jauregui, the 24-year-old Mexican, is a perfect 10-0 overall. She's 2-0 since joining the UFC as a former strawweight standout in Combate Global. She fought most recently back in December, knocking out Estela Nunes in the 2nd round. So she'll step in here looking to make it 3 in a row and mint herself a prospect/rising contender in this division. She'll be facing off against Gomes. 23-year-old Brazilian is 7-2 overall. She's 1-1 since joining the UFC out of the 6th season of Dana White's Contender Series. She won on the Contender Series last August, debuted just 4 weeks later against Loma Lookboonmee, dropping a unanimous decision. She got her second shot in April at UFC on ESPN Holloway versus Allen, where she pounded out Bruna Brazil in the 2nd round. She will look to follow up the example of her significant other, Carl Hossa, who won last week at UFC Vegas 76 and win her 2nd in a row. She is decidedly not favored to do so. Jauregui, minus 400 favorite. Gomes plus 300 underdog. Keith, do you believe in Yazmin Jauregui as a strawweight prospect? Do you like her upside?
I like both these girls upside.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised at the line here. I favor Jauregui as well, but Gomes, if anything, Gomes is more of a Parana Valetudo, one from that mold than Carla Hossa is. She's much more from the Jessica Andrade, type mold. I mean, definitely feels a lot more raw than Jauregui, but yeah, I was surprised at a 4-1 favorite here. Who you got in this one and how?
She reminds me of? She just reminds me of that mid 2007, 2006 fighter, that less technique, more just hit the bomb power shots, your Vanderlei Silva types. Which it's funny because you said she needs some cleaning up, or she's still way more technical than Vanderlei Silva, best fighter in the world ever was.
Vanderlei Silva managed to become one of the 3 top for pound fighters in this world without ever throwing a straight punch.
Yeah. when I box my son, my son just ducks his head and just swings.
He's coming at you.
Yeah. Jauregui, I mean, she looked great in her last fight. She's a strong athlete who, I said in the past, reminds me of Joanna Jędrzejczyk. High output striker, pressure striker, quick hands. What I love about her is the amount of combinations, the amount of punches. She doesn't throw a 2-3 punch combination. She throws a 4, 5, 6 punch combination when she attacks. This will leave her to get countered, and some of that has to be because she's not fast enough to land something like that and get out. And I don't know if anybody other than maybe Demetrius Johnson is, but that's okay. She's okay with getting hit once, so she's gonna hit. She throws 6 punches, she hits 2 or 3 of them herself. She's accurate. She's got great footwork. Likes to avoid the shots by cutting angles and L-stepping. Has some serious power. I mean, she has 5 first-round KOs. She hurt Estela Nunez, who's a good striker herself, in her last fight. She tends to have like a killer instinct. That's something I put in my notes. And after her last fight, strong calf kicks, though she will throw some naked calf kicks. I like that she shows some clinch work. She can get in clinch. Not an offensive wrestler, and she's got some weak takedown defense. So that if she wants to be a top contender, she's definitely gonna have to improve. But she's hard to hold down, and if she's on top, she's got mean ground and pound. Now, Gomes, she's good too. Like, she's a kickboxer who's just pure aggression, very aggressive, marches down her foes, very slip and rip style. Though I've seen her pillar in the past, which I'm not crazy about. She is also heavy on her front foot, which leaves her open to kicks, but also generates so much power, and that's what she does. I mean, she's a big power puncher. She hits hard. She loves her overhand right. But it really is her short hooks inside that opponents need to be aware of. That's where she's dangerous. She's got some good calf kicks. Has a very quick high kick. That's something that Daniel Cormier kept pointing out in the Contender Series as her best tool. That's what he said. I don't know if it's her best tool, but it's something to watch. She throws way too many spinning attacks, which I don't like. She kept throwing the same like stupid spinning whale kick on the Contender Series, but she's physically strong, good entries, a weak defensive wrestler, and I hate that she defends takedowns by going for a switch, which really I don't think it works that great in regular wrestling. It definitely doesn't work that good in MMA where you can lock your hands, but we've talked about that way too much. And she also got headlocked by Loma Lugumi, which we both like Loma, and we've always talked about that her wrestling is drastically underrated. But what I like about it, she's hard to hold down, and she has, despite being a fighter who's so aggressive and mean, those are the fighters that tend to gas out. She doesn't. She's gone hard in 15 minutes. I love this fight and also hate this fight. And why I say that is I love this fight because I think we have 2 amazing fighters. I hate it because someone has to lose early in their UFC careers. I would prefer these 2 to have met later on in their careers. And to like Gomes' credit, like they've been throwing her in with killers. Like I don't know if she pissed somebody off in the UFC, but I think the lines are way off. Like I'm picking Yazmin. Yazmin. If I'm so apologize if I'm saying that wrong. I'm taking her because she's more technical and more polished, but the line should be closer just because of Gomes' wrestling and her power. I'm going to go with the speed and volume of Yazmin on the feet. I think Yazmin gets a decision behind her box and her calf kicks, but I'm not as confident. What you say? What would you say? Like 4-1?
Minus 400. Yeah, 4-1
that's
favorite.
Crazy.
Yep.
Like not crazy. I like her. Like to me, I think the sky's the limit to her, but just the power of Gomes and the wrestling is something to be worried about.
Thank you. Yes, you laid it out. I'm sorry. Did you give your?
Yeah, I think Jauregui, sorry, by decision.
No, I mean I'm just like jumping at the mic here just because I agree so much. I think Jauregui is a more complete fighter, and it may turn out in the end that she had a higher ceiling all along. But I said I've been thinking about a lot of these fights. Okay, what are the avenues to victory for the underdog? And you pointed out that Jauregui, even at her best, is hittable, and Gomes definitely has greater one-shot power. So even here, the favorite fighter, her path to victory is probably going to involve her getting hit cleanly a few times around. I don't like that's scary, a scary person to take at minus 400. Like she's going to have to subject herself to what Gomes does well, even to win her kind of fight. I liked your comparison of her to Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I also thought of like Max Holloway, someone who throws long combinations where he's going to throw 6 punches, land 5 of them, and he is going to take 2 in return. But he just
you can't mention Max Holloway on a Alex Volkanovski card, or somehow she's gonna get the next shot at featherweight.
Wow, like I'm invoking the Max Holloway magic for like make it happen, UFC. And because of that, just because it wouldn't be that shocking if they're engaging in the phone booth and Gomes hits her with something real hard and turns the whole fight. But generally speaking, I favor Jauregui as well. I think she probably wins a decision in a really exciting fight. I'm interested to see what it looks like if Gomes commits to wrestling early, because it might change the dynamic of the striking as well, if that's one more thing that Jauregui has to worry about. Gomes is a good offensive wrestler, and I think a lot of it just runs off of her build and her athleticism and her aggression. She comes out swinging hammers, and I think her level change can take people by surprise, or just, her stepping in for a body lock, her strength takes them by surprise. Her defensive wrestling is a little more concerning. Like, Loma Lookboonmee, underrated wrestler or not, is tiny and got multiple takedowns pretty easily against Gomes. That's probably not something she's going to have to worry about that much in this fight. That's more of a question for, her future trajectory as a prospect. But in this fight, yeah, I favor Jauregui to win what ends up being mostly a kickboxing match contested on the feet. Maybe she puts a scare into Jauregui a few times, but ends up dropping a decision here. So give me Jauregui by decision in, again, a pretty fun prelim between two fighters that definitely have lots of upside in the strawweight division. Next up at UFC 290, we have a welterweight matchup between Jack Della Maddalena and the short notice debut of Josiah Harrell. Della Maddalena, 26-year-old Australian, is 14-2 overall. As I alluded to earlier on the show, he lost his first two professional fights and has been undefeated ever since. He's on a 14-fight win streak. The last 4 of those in the UFC Octagon. He joined the UFC through the 5th season of Dana White's Contender Series, and since then he has 4 first-round finishes of Pete Rodriguez, Ramazan Amaev, Danny Roberts, and Randy Brown. The most recent of those, the Brown fight, was a first-round submission at UFC 284 back in February. He had been scheduled to take on fellow hot prospect / fringe contender Sean Brady. Brady was pulled out of the card about 10 or 12 days out with an injury. As late as Sunday, before the Monday of fight week, Della Maddalena might have been scratched from the card. The UFC was still looking for an opponent. Sunday afternoon, it is announced that CFFC and LFA veteran Josiah Harrell will be stepping up. The 24-year-old Ohio native is a perfect 7-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. He fought most recently just 2 weeks ago at LFA 160, knocking out Michael Roberts in a 160 or in a lightweight matchup. And then prior to that, he had fought in CFFC at a 160-pound catchweight. Here he gets the short notice call up, and he gets the bit of a weight allowance, as the habitual 155/160 pounder will be fighting at 170. Keith, I'm going to make you guess. Where is this fight ranked among the widest lines in the card? We already have Tatsuro Taira at -900. We have Bo Nickal. We have Bo Nickal still coming.
Well, considering this fight was announced about 5 minutes before we went on air, we had to stop real quick and look up tape on the newcomer. I'm surprised it even is betting lines on him, but I'll go. I'm gonna say it's higher than Taira, and you said Taira is 10-1.
He's -900. He's 9-1.
Oh, 9-1.
Yeah.
Can I go like 1,500? Negative 1,500?
All right, so you call -1,500. Della Maddalena, one book had numbers out on immediately. Della Maddalena is -825.
Oh, get out of here.
Harrell +550.
All
and
right.
It's not often that Keith and I are surprised and saying a line should be wider, but I'm on board on this. The reason Josiah Harrell is in the UFC in 6 days is because he went viral just a couple weeks ago in that Roberts fight because he shot a double leg takedown and put the man through the cage door. That's not a Josiah Harrell highlight. That's a highlight for the dude that was supposed to put the fucking pin in the door. Here's the problem. Josiah Harrell's nickname is the Muscle Hamster, and I don't know if that is a conscious homage to Sean the Muscle Shark Shirk, but Harrell looks exactly like if Sean Shirk and Josh Koscheck had a baby. And even at 155, well, because he's got the build of Shirk along with somewhat of the build of Koscheck, and then Koscheck's kind of like wild pseudo afro hair, like whipping back from his head. The problem is that from what I've observed, and I watched a couple of his whole fights and then highlights of several others this afternoon, there are some people that are undefeated on their way into to major promotions and they are a child of destiny. And then there are ones where you've heard me ask Keith on this show, is this just somebody that hasn't run into the right opponent yet? Harrell has just not run into the right opponent yet. Even at 155, he is short and stocky. He's like a 5'6", 5'7" guy. He is a grappler by background. You know, there's more tape of him at grappling competitions than there is of him in MMA fights. But his fight in CFFC last October, he was fighting at 160-pound catch weight, so it's not like he was fighting a full-size welterweight. He was undersized, and for a guy that's famous for putting a guy through a cage door with a double leg, he got taken down easily over and over again by Tracy Reeder. That turned into a weird fight because Reeder hit him with a questionably illegal knee in the first round. Yeah. And then, but around that weird foul, Reeder won the first round handily, and he was winning the second round handily until Harrell reversed him in a flash, then pounded him out in like 10 seconds. Like, it was a great comeback, but he was well on his way to losing to a okay regional prospect. Harrell, he's a decent offensive wrestler, though again, he's not the offensive wrestler that highlight would lead you to believe. On the feet, he's a southpaw with not great reach, obviously, and not great at navigating the reach of taller fighters. Like, he's only 24, so obviously there's plenty of time to develop, but right now he's not very good, and Jack Della Maddalena is absolutely incredible. Like, I'm not a betting man. This is not a betting show, but if this thing is still hanging around at minus 800, I would hammer that. Like, I don't see what Josiah Harrell is going to do to beat Jack Della Maddalena. I'm looking at I'm looking at possible avenues to victory for Harrell, and his wins have been overwhelming inferior athletes on the ground or getting really impressive, just tricky sweeps on the ground and coming back to win a fight he was losing. Those are not things he's going to do to Jack Della Maddalena. I'm still waiting for the UFC to sign the guy that did that to Jack Della Maddalena's nose. Until, that's who they should have got. That's who they should have signed for this fight. But here, Della Maddalena is going to destroy him on the feet. Harrell, I think Della Maddalena is going to kick him repeatedly. He's going to have like kicks to the body open on the open side here. Della Maddalena is a much better boxer with better reach, throws straighter punches. I don't think Harrell can take Della Maddalena down, but I think Della Maddalena can take Harrell down if he wants. And Harrell has the jiu-jitsu practitioner's willingness to concede takedowns with guillotine, work from his back, and it's just not going to work. Give me Jack Della Maddalena here. I'm going to say he gets a first-round TKO on the ground, like hurts him on the feet, plows into the ground with like a nice reactive takedown, and just pounds him out on the ground. Harrell will get more chances in the UFC. Maybe they'll give him a chance at 155, but this is not going to be his night. This is not the biggest, obviously not the biggest line on the card, but this is the fight on the card I feel most comfortable about, even above Nickal.
Yeah, this is so the muscle hamster. Isn't that Doug Martin, the old running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Was that his nickname?
Was it literally
I think it was the muscle hamster. I think that was his nickname. I think he'd have a better chance than this guy coming in to fight Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, the old Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back.
He was the muscle hamster.
The muscle hamster. Oh man, Jack! I love this kid, Jack Della Maddalena. He's so good. He looks so amazing in his last fight. He looks so amazing so far in the UFC. Great footwork, cuts angles so well. Void shots with really good vision. He's a deadly striker. Can fight out of both stances. He's a builder. As the fight goes on, his output increases. Short, tight shots. Not a lot of tells. Extremely accurate. I love that he rips the body. When he gets in close, he looks for elbows. He's got good power, and he's not even in his power years yet. He's got 10 knockouts. He showed power in his last fight against a really good welterweight in Randy Brown, who's got tricky and I think he's better than his ranking shows. He is open to leg kicks because he's having his front foot, so that's something to watch. He has a judo background, though he's obviously can get some throws and some sweeps and stuff like that. But he'll also shoot for takedowns. Though he will shoot without setting him up, which is a little concerning. But he's so good at winning scrambles. Definitely like a funk style grappler. If you try to take his back, I love he does like Grammy rolls. He's hard to take down, and he has a submission threat. Now move over to Josiah Harrell. I was looking up some things about him. Yeah, he stole Doug Martin's nickname. He's a former cheerleader. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. Maybe he and Derek Brunson like went to cheerleader camp together.
He's pretty ripped. I'll give that. Like he's ripped.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned he's moving up in weight. That's it's not moving up is never really too big of a concern to you. We're kind of about in the same category as long as you're not undersized. I think he is undersized. He's a southpaw. He throws a lot of hooks, but he throws single shots. He kind of telegraphs stuff. Now a lot of this, I'm going off like 1 or 2 fights that I 2 fights I scrambled in real quick before we started. So like I don't have the best reads on this guy, but he doesn't set up his shots very well. His entries, he throws a lot of hard kicks. But he's open to leg kicks. I mean, going back to the Rita fight, it was one of the fights I watched. He was getting his legs kicked out. He also keeps his chin high in the air. He didn't like being pressured. He's got good entries when you're pursuing him. You mentioned he slammed his opponent through the cage. Good ground and pound. He is a submission artist, but he's a weak defensive wrestler. Like I see him get taken down in multiple fights pretty easily. Like let's see. You got one of the best prospects in MMA going against an undersized cheerleader making his UFC debut on a week's notice. Like, who am I picking? I was trying to think of ways that he could win. Yeah, Maddalena slips on a banana peel on the way to the cage. He falls down a flight of stairs or something. If Maddalena falls down the stairs, I remember you used to tape your show when you were on the top of the stairs, but it's being like it's tough right now seeing how far the wall is behind you, But you used to do it by the stairs, and I used to always picture that Alfred Hitchcock, like you're falling down the stairs, like as you're going down.
Dude, if he fell downstairs, he dusts himself off and still wins.
Just get back up. I remember, like, I'm gonna go back, like, story time with Keith. I haven't given a story time with Keith in a long time. When I was in high school, I was a wrestler. I wrestled in college and all stuff. I was top guy in the state. Not saying much. I know it's only Rhode Island, but I remember I was wrestling this team, and they had 2 pretty good wrestlers, like in 2 different weight classes. They used to bounce back and forth between the weight classes, and one of the guys, one of the top guys in the state. And the other guy was like solid. It'd be a good match, but like I was gonna kill him, and I was gonna beat the other guy too. And we're warming up, and you know how it is when you're wrestling. Like when it's dual meet, like you have to torch the guy out first. Mm-hmm. Like one team has to like, all right, this guy comes out. So it's my weight class, and it was actually us had to toss out first. So I'm like, I don't know, because they're both warming up. I don't know which guy I'm getting. So I run out there all excited, thinking, all right, hopefully I get this top guy in the state. If not, I'll get this guy. He's good. I play this game, and like some freaking JV kid came out, and that's why I feel like this match. Like you had Chris Curtis volunteer taking on Jack Della. You had Kevin Holland, and I know it's easy for me to say, "Oh, just toss those guys in." I get it, that's easy. But like at least I got the JV kid, and I pinned him really quick, and I remember I stared down like the other guys. I was like, because I was a really cocky punk, like. When I pinned him, I stared down this guy.
I find that impossible to pick.
Yeah, go figure. not to mention, I wouldn't have told the story if I lost.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's fact checking going back to the old 2000 wrestling days, but one thing, like I got the JV. What they didn't do is they didn't toss out the cheerleader from the team and say go get him. Like what are we doing? Like this guy's gonna get murdered. Like I would have rather Jack Della not being on the card and just fighting.
Push him a month down the road against
an actual decent challenge. Like this guy could. This guy was so confident. He said open invitation to anybody in welterweight or I'll go up to middleweight. and you find like I'm not trying to hate on Harrell, and maybe he wins and I look like an idiot, but this is going to be a massacre. Maddalena is going to win by first round TKO.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing to that, this card didn't need this fight. Like it was great when it had Della Maddalena versus Brady. It was just an example of how loaded the undercard was going to be. But it's a 14 fight card, and while it has a bunch of Australians on it, it's not in Australia. Like if this fight was taking place in Melbourne, I'd be like, okay, yeah, find him anybody. But
that might, that might have been the thing though. Like he just flew in from Melbourne. I mean, he probably hasn't flown yet. What am I talking about? I was gonna say like, if it happened like 2 or 3 days from now, maybe you would have flew in already, or maybe he did. Maybe because of the time change or something. Maybe you already flew in, and you're like, oh man, we spent all this money on flights. Let's get him somebody. But I'm like, we're talking about Alfred Hitchcock. Like Maddalena's got about the same chances that lady did in the shower, and Maddalena's coming in. Yeah.
All right, so we both got Jack Della Maddalena by first round, like blood swirling down the drain. All right.
I can tell you where my wife lives, where she grew up. She grew up in like nowhere, New Brunswick, Canada. Like it's like you cross the border and it's like cornfield, potato field, corn. It's where. Do you guys have McCain's? You probably do. Like you probably don't really realize you do, but McCain's, like frozen potatoes and shit. Like you definitely do.
Okay.
You probably don't really. Like same with me. Like I never realized I ate McCain's until like I look now and I'm like, oh, there's McCain's. Like I didn't know it until my wife went, that's the big business in that town is McCain.
So like she's from potato country.
Yeah. But anyways, you drive in late at night. There's like this one random, like I said, what I'm saying is cornfield. You see another car passing the other direction like every 25 minutes. Like it's no one's up there, middle of nowhere, and you see this little red light. It almost like flickers too, like, and it's a random ass little motel with this red sign in the middle of this cornfield, and it always reminds me of the Bates Motel. And I'm like, I don't give a shit if my car breaks down. I'm not going to that hotel. But anyways, when me and my wife got married, my parents came up. Yeah, obviously they came up. We got married in our hometown. Trying to be traditional. We got married in our hometown. And my parents and my sisters, they stayed at that freaking. It's the only place you could stay. It was that the Bates Motel in the middle of nowhere cornfields.
Wow. Sorry, I'm just looking at the map of New Brunswick right now. Wow.
Oh, dude, I'll tell you another quick story. This one, if somehow I could get this on air, it's a pretty good one. So I'm working a detail, maybe I'm trying to think, maybe like March-ish, give or take. And I'm waiting before the thing starts. I have to be like an hour early. I mean, it was for like a play. And I started talking to this lady. And I don't know how somehow I go, oh, yeah, my wife's Canadian. She's like, oh, that's funny. My husband's Canadian. I'm like, oh, well, funny world, And she's like, where's your wife from? I'm like, oh, she's from New Brunswick. She's like, oh, so is my husband. And she's like, what town? And I'm like, some town you never heard of, Heartland. She was like, get the fuck out. She's like, you're joking. Like, is this a joke? I'm like, oh. She's like, my husband is from Heartland. Like, no way.
So she's looking around for the hidden camera now?
Yeah. Like, and we're both like, all right, what's going on? And then we like, I called my wife and she's like, what's his name? And she's like, yeah, I know. I went to high school with him. And they're like, the high school class is like 17 kids. Like, yeah, I've known my whole life.
That's amazing, dude. Small world.
Yeah, his mom's this person. And yeah, he was friends with my older brother. And yeah.
Yeah, I'll totally leave all that in. You ready for Lawler versus?
Oh, you leaving all that in?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, it all flowed fine, and I'm gonna refer to it here. Next up at UFC 290, and at least as the card is constituted as of the beginning of fight week, the top prelim features Robbie Lawler versus Niko Price. And if you've been listening to this show start to finish and you wonder why Keith went into a lengthy multi-epic story time at the end of the Della Maddalena Harrell preview, it's because neither of us is super excited to talk about this one. It feels like I'm putting together the program for the funeral of somebody like I knew and admired. So here we go. Lawler, the 41-year-old California-born, longtime Iowa resident, is 29-16 with one no contest in a legendary mixed martial arts career. He has been in the UFC for 2 separate stints. He, of course, went 4-3 from 2002 to 2004 as one of the first early 20-something prospects of the unified rules era of the UFC, then wandered in the wilderness for almost a full decade, going across just about every promotion in the world, fighting at 170 as well as 185 before making his way back to the UFC in 2013 to relatively little fanfare and low expectations. But he has been 10-7 in the UFC since his return, and that includes a unexpected and somewhat inspirational title run. But that part of the story is also over, and Lawler is now 1-5 in his last 6 fights, dating back 6 full years, with the only win in that time a bizarre win over a shot and disinterested Nick Diaz. The last time we saw Lawler in the cage was almost exactly a year ago. In fact, it was exactly a year ago as of the night Keith and I are recording this. It was July 2nd of last year, where he got knocked out in the second round by Bryan Barberena. I had kind of expected a retirement announcement from Lawler, but it was not to be. He is back for one more fight at least, and he'll be facing off against Price. The 33-year-old Floridian is 15-6 with 2 no contests overall. He is 7-6 with 1 no contest in the UFC, and those 7 wins, 6 losses, and 1 no contest are scattered almost in an alternating pattern back and forth, going back a long, long time. He is coming back off of a loss as well. He appeared in December at UFC on ESPN, Thompson versus Holland, where he was knocked out in the 3rd round by Phil Rowe. Prior to that, he had won a unanimous decision over Alex Oliveira. So he'll be looking to get back in the win column. That has been the pattern for his UFC career, and that is the expectation of the bookmakers, who have installed Price at around minus 260 as the favorite, Lawler plus 220 as the underdog. I mean, Keith, Lawler versus Barberena, I think you and I talked about it on the preview for that show. I said, if Lawler can't beat this guy, he's truly, truly done, because this is someone that he would have run over roughshod even just 3 years ago. Like the Lawler who was losing to Dos Anjos and Covington and the weird robbery against Ben Askren would have absolutely trucked Bryan Barberena. Like, he wasn't that shot yet.
All right, hold on a second. Let's not go with a robbery. Don't get all Lev on us. Just tossing out a robbery against Van Askren. I mean, we're not saying that Lawler would have won that fight.
No, we're just saying that he had not tapped out. And
okay, fair enough.
And they called it a submission. I mean, that to me is more of a robbery than like bad scorecards. Like, he just
fair enough.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you weren't counting as Lawler was going to win that fight.
Oh no, I'm not. Although
he might have.
I mean, he tombstone pile drivered the guy like a minute before that. But like that version of Lawler, I think would have destroyed Bryan Barberena. Barberena, stylistically, as an aggressive, come forward but low power striker. I mean, that was almost. It was almost the most favorable matchup they could have given Lawler last year that wasn't just completely laughable, because Barberena's pretty shot as well, and Barberena ended up knocking him out. And what did they give Lawler for his trouble? A matchup in Price with a bigger, younger, harder-hitting fighter than Barberena.
Thanks.
It's bad, man. I was kind of looking at, okay, if the underdog wins here, what does it look like? Like, what does 41-year-old Robbie Lawler have left? He's still a hard puncher, but his one-shot power was never the best part of his game, even when he was in his prime. And the rest of it is gone. He used to like be a fundamentally like sound kickboxer who kind of excelled in like the Dustin Poirier type situation, where if the bullets are flying and you're in the phone booth with him, you're hitting him with glancing stuff just because his guard is good and he's rolling with punches and he's coming back and hitting you with bombs, and you're going to get the worst of that exchange. That was prime Robbie Lawler. And on top of it, just had some underused and just brutal kicks. But he doesn't have any of that anymore. He's slowed down so much. His gas tank is gone. His chin is gone. And even somebody like Price, that is maybe the UFC's pound for pound king of finding weird and bizarre ways to lose fights, just none of that is going to play into what Robbie Lawler can do here. And coming back the other way, Price is a diverse striker who has power in just about everything, does not lack for volume. He's going to come forward and he's going to go out on a shield or with it. And if things go to the ground, like, is a tricky, sticky grappler who's opportunistic as well. This is just danger for Robbie Lawler everywhere. And I had the feeling it's just going to make me sad to see. But give me Niko Price here by second round TKO. And we might even get a first round where Lawler's almost finished, like a 10-8 type first round where everybody's just going, throw the damn towel. Please, Henry Hoof, throw the damn towel. And he doesn't throw the towel, and we get a couple more minutes of it. But yeah, give me Price by second round TKO here, and it'll just be a bummer.
Is it like Rocky 4 where Apollo's wife is screaming to throw the towel and Rocky doesn't throw it?
Yeah. He's just holding the bloody towel in his hand, and it just falls from his hand.
And Henry Hoof is just laying over Robbie Lawler at the end.
Yes, that's exactly. I mean, honestly, Robbie Lawler, it's welterweight Shogun. It just feels like Shogun's last couple fights where they're matching him up against the most vulnerable people they can match him up with without it just being a complete farce, and they're still killing him.
Yeah. Was Rocky 4? Is that the one where he rides his motorcycle when he gets sad, or is that the one he rides like the Corvette, or is that like the Lamborghini?
It's the motorcycle.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he decides.
Rocky 3, he rides like the Corvette or something. Whatever. I'm not sure what it was. It's some kind of sports car. It
was the one that, I mean, it looked like the car from Knight Rider. I was a young kid when I saw Rocky 3, but I think 4 is the one where he rides the motorcycle and he throws his motorcycle helmet at like the statue of himself, and then he's like, "I'm gonna go fight him in Russia."
How great! How great was like those movies? All right. Anyways,
you're muted. Like even Keith's mic is like, I don't want to talk about this.
It fits perfect because Lawler is like a Rocky type, and the transition was perfect from the Heartland, New Brunswick class my wife graduated. Because like, what was it? More people in my wife's graduating class or Niko Price's kids? Like, I mean, this is reportedly his retirement fight. Thank God. Because Robbie Lawler, I mean, he's shot, which is sad because we all love him. I mean, who isn't a fan of Robbie Lawler? What I expect to happen is him to retire. Then, he fights bare knuckle and like
he's boxing Mike Perry.
And all these websites that like have deals with the bare knuckle boxing people, like write articles about how loaded it is, and like I throw up in my mouth hearing that matchup. Robbie Lawler, he's a southpaw. He never, if we're being honest, he never had the best output ever. But due to his age, it has declined even more. Though in fairness, like we're rewatching the Magny and the Barberino fights, I think it's better than I've given him credit for. Like I kind of made him like an Andre Arlovsky type, where he just doesn't throw punches. Even in legendary fights like the Cowles kind of fight, he tend to fight in spurts. He's a mid-range striker that fires power shots. He likes like uppercuts inside. He's probably going to need to land one big shot and get the KO. But I love that you mentioned that if we're being honest about Robbie Lawler, he's never been a one punch end the fight, knock him out. It's that Rory McDonald just, he wasn't a sledgehammer. He's that like finish nailer. Like he's, eventually that nail's going to go in all the way, but it's not going with that one big shot, Yeah. He stung Neil Magny in that fight a little bit in a fight that he got absolutely trashed. So it's possible. He still has some powerful leg kicks. His wrestling is completely gone. It's been gone forever, but he's never been a submission threat. He's never had a good get-up game. Chin is an issue at this point. I mean, he got knocked out by Brian Barberino. And you just think about all the damage he's taken over like a 2-decade career. He doesn't get, even though he's taking a lot of damage, he deflects a lot of the shots because he rolls with punches well. But even that, like, that never helps you on the scoring, because you get that Bobby Green effect where it's like, it still looks like you ain't hit. Niko Price, he's a good athlete. He marches down his foes. He wants to press the action, which is why he struggled against a guy like Vicente Luque and even Jeff Neal, because those guys force you to back foot, being better athletes and hitting harder. He has a long jab. He's got big power. He tries to be more controlled, when he fights, but so often he gets drawn into a brawl. He will give a shot to land one of his own, and he's got insane toughness. Like, his chin might be fading. Like, he's been hurt a lot, but he's got insane toughness. He uses his if he gets to the clinch, he can wrestle a little bit. He uses his size well in there. He's got some strong, dirty boxing, batters with knees and elbows inside the clinch. He uses height really well to kind of angle to get better, like torque when he's throwing up knees. Weak defensive wrestler. I mean, go back to Michel Pereira, took him down like 3 times in their fight, but he's got a good submission game and good at scrambling and end up, and just making things happen. And he's hard to hold down, and he's got good cardio. Like, he got knocked out by Phil Rowe, but he had an insane output in that fight. Price is better than Lawler everywhere at this point in their careers. However, like, I agree with you. Like, it's a tougher matchup than Barbarino. But that said, out of all the people in the UFC, like this is a good option for Lawler, because the former champion at this point, if we're being honest, really has to be just a one-shot kind of guy. And Price will give you that opportunity. Like, you're going to connect on Price. Do I think he knocks him out? No, I don't. I think the volume of the power will be too much for Lawler, and I think Price knocks him out. So I'll say Price knocks out Lawler in the second round.
Jokes during the intro aside, the main card opener of UFC 290 is a middleweight matchup between undefeated super prospect Bo Nickal and Tresean Gore. Nickal, the 27-year-old fighting out of State College, Pennsylvania, is a perfect 4-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. He is 1-0 in the UFC. He appeared twice on Dana White's Contender Series last year, just about 6 weeks apart, beating Zachary Borrego and Donovan Beard. The second of those wins was enough to punch his ticket to the UFC. He made his debut at UFC 285 in March, where he arm triangle choked Jamie Pickett in the first round. So he'll look to make his pro career 5-0, go 2-0 in the UFC at the expense of Gore. The 29-year-old South Carolina native is 4-2 overall. He is 1-2 since joining the UFC as the middleweight runner-up of the 29th season of The Ultimate Fighter. He lost to Brian Battle last February, came back and got knocked out by Cody Brundage last July, and finally got his first UFC win in October at UFC Fight Night Cater versus Allen, where he choked Josh Fremd all the way out early in the second round. So Gore looking to make it 2 in a row in the UFC here. To say he is not favored to do so would be an exercise in laughable understatement. Keith, obviously, that Bo Nickal's a big favorite. Even without looking, you may have a ballpark idea. Tell me what the minus is on Nickal.
Well, I know his last one was like ridiculous. Gore is, I mean, he should negative 400.
Minus 1,400.
Oh,
Nickal.
This guy's been fighting MMA for 1 year.
Yep, he debuted early last year professionally.
Yeah.
Nickal minus 1,400. It may end up being the widest line of any UFC fight not involving like a short notice opponent change in all of 2023. Okay, Keith, before we even get to actual predictions for the fight, give us a quick recap of why Bo Nickal is special. Like, give us the 60-second picture of his wrestling achievements.
I'm gonna say something, and it's extremely controversial, but I'll continue to say this. And Bo Nickal's the best wrestler who's ever come to MMA. And what I mean by that is he's not the best credentialed. There's Olympic champions, world champions, but a lot of them come or pretty much all of them come after they're done wrestling and they can't compete on the high level wrestling stage anymore. Like your Mark Schultz. Like Mark Schultz came to MMA. He couldn't compete. And he's a better wrestler than Bo Nickal was. He was, Olympic champion, Kevin Jackson, Kenny Monday, like whoever. Even Henry Cejudo. Cejudo tried to, make the Olympic team again. He couldn't. These guys couldn't. Their wrestling peak was done. Bo Nickal could still compete right now and medal at the World Championships and possibly win. I'm trying to think what the 197 is in kilograms. It's like whatever, like not David Taylor's weight class, the weight class above. Like Bo Nickal could compete in that weight class in medal, and it's I'm not 125, it's the one next down, so it'd be like 97 kilograms, something like that.
Yeah, like 89 kilograms is like the one that we call 197.
Okay, 89. Okay, so 89 kilograms. He could competing that, and he could. No, I'm not saying he could beat Kyle Snyder but what's the next one? What's the next one down? The one that oh my god, I can't think of his name. So it's not David Taylor. It's the next weight class. This David Taylor is weight class up. Then it's Kyle Snyder, and then it's Gable Stevenson. This is not good. Not good.
I mean, is David Taylor the person we most have to thank for Bo Nickal being here?
Yes, absolutely.
Just like him getting beaten pretty handily by Taylor.
He didn't though. That's the thing. He in the Olympic trials he lost like 4-0, I think, and then like 6-2 or something like that. David Taylor killed everybody up until the gold medalist match.
Well, I'm not saying he had like tech fault or anything, but like maybe that was when Nickal realized, okay, I have a hard ceiling as long as Taylor's around. I'm gonna have a hard time getting past him.
Yeah, he would probably have to move a weight class or something. But let me tell you what he's a 4-time NCAA finalist. He's a 3-time NCAA champion. To win, Matt Hughes never made the finals.
Nope.
Daniel Cormier made the finals once, and again he went against Cael Sanderson, but made the finals one time. Whoever, they fill in all the guys. He made the NCAAs 4 times. He won the 3 times. He won the Hodge Trophy. The Hodge Trophy is your Heisman. He won that. He won the most pins in a season. He went to the U.S. U23. He went to the U23 World Championship, won it. He came straight out of college, took on Jaden Cox after Jaden Cox won the World Championship and lost like 2-0 or something like that, or 4-3 or something. I don't know what it was, but he gave Jaden Cox, the reigning world champion, a match. He would have reached the Olympics if David Taylor, he lost in the finals of the trials. David Taylor won the Olympic gold.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bo Nickal would have went to the Olympics and he would have medaled. He could enter the next Olympics and I joke about it. He could have won. He could win the Olympics. Now again, he's not training MMA. I'm sorry, not training wrestling, so it's a little different. Okay, I get that, but I'm saying if he continued training, at his very best, he might upset a guy like Hassan Yazdani. I'm not saying he would win, but that's the guy that's like the reigning world champion. That's the guy. It's like him and David. That's who David Taylor beat in the finals for the Olympic gold. I'm not saying he would have beat him, but it's a possibility. Like that's how good. Like I remember when I first was talking about Bo Nickal and someone messaged me like, who would win, Shemaev or Bo Nickal in a wrestling match? Bo Nickal would, and I said I know I did this last time. We talked about Bo Nickal. Bo Nickal would pin Shemaev in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Or he would, your freestyle wrestler, he'd put him in like a leg lace and just roll him 5 times in seconds. Mm-hmm. Anyways, I'm sure you want me to continue to break this down.
Well, I just, I wanted to talk a little bit about, because there are plenty of people that have watched our show and they know that we never pass up a opportunity to talk half jokingly about Bo Nickal is the greatest fighter in the world, but it's grounded in the way we both actually feel about him. And so I wanted to talk about that for just a sec before we broke down the actual fight. Just the one thing I wanted to throw in is earlier this year when you and I did a Sherdog preview for the NCAA Wrestling Championships. And something we talked about during the intro to that was when you think about wrestlers that you wish would cross over to MMA, what are the markers that you look for that make you think, okay, this person would have good potential? And the things I brought out were raw athleticism. Like anyone can succeed, but I'd rather have a Michael Chandler type than a Ben Askren type in terms of just raw athleticism. And then attitude. I want a guy that is a little bit combative, a little bit cocky, a guy that looks like he wants to throw a punch when he's wrestling.
Austin DeSanto would be perfect.
Yeah. And you threw in, you would prefer, all else being equal, guys with a little bit lankier body types, like more of a John Jones than, like just a little Brand's brother tank of a man. And you threw out, you want aggressive wrestlers whose style depends on them nullifying what the other guy is trying to do to win, aren't what you really want to cross over to MMA. You want guys that are, that their game runs off of offense. And I mean, Bo Nickal checks all those boxes.
Yeah, he was never like obviously he could shoot doubles and all that. He was just great at scrambles. You shoot on him, he made you pay for it. You miss a bad shot on him, he's cradling you up. And he's pin guys. He had big moves. There's if you go to if you ask me right now, is there one person in the wrestling you'd rather have come to MMA than Bo Nickal? Gable Steveson, because I've never seen a heavyweight move like him. Kata Starachi is a guy that I love his attitude. He's got a little bad guy. And I'm not. Stevenson was the answer. Now I'm just thinking about guys I love on the NCAA and international scene, but guys like Kyle Dake, who's incredible. Oh my God, multi-time world champion. He doesn't have that mean streak in him. Like he was made to be a wrestler. We got a guy like Spencer Lee, who's who knows what's going to go on with him, but that's a guy that, oh my God, I'd die from him. But still, he's made to go on to wrestle and coach and.
Kel Sanderson,
Jordan Burroughs, David Taylor. Like when David Taylor was going on Ariel Helwani and people asking him about oh, you got to fight MMA. I was like, he's already 32 or something. Like he's not, even if he did, he's not gonna be the same guy. That's why it's so rare. And people think I make up a joke, like how rare it is to get a guy like Bo Nickal. And he's 27. Roman Bravo Young, who's now doing a BJJ, and he's talked about MMA. He's like 24. Mm-hmm. He'd be starting even before Bo Nickal. Snatch him up right now because he doesn't have interest in wrestling and internationally. It seems like he's not even wasting that little bit of time. Sign him right now. Why isn't he signed yet?
Yeah,
and that's a 2-time NCAA champion. Lighter weight class, a little different than a little harder. And I know we don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole because I could all get NCAA wrestling for the rest of the show.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, and hey, people, they can fast forward if they want. I just wanted to give kind of a picture to the uninitiated of why we go on at much greater length about Bo Nickal than we would about any other 4-0, middleweight. And I think that pretty much covers it. Next question for you, one I've asked myself a few times on the show already. If Gore as the plus 800 underdog wins this fight, what does it look like?
He catches him a big shot. So say this about Bo Nickal is he's still very green. Like we joke about him. It's hard to really grasp what we're going to get with Nickal out there, being that he only started fighting, professionally about a year ago, I think. Really, but
he has less than one round of total cage time.
He has less than one round of total cage time, and then even his amateur was really quick. So he's probably been fighting training 2 years. And of course, it's a little different because of the wrestling background. And so it's not like he just some guy coming off the street, with 2 years experience. I understand it's apples and oranges, but he's still raw. He's a long and lengthy fighter who's a southpaw. He likes to strike. Despite being the best wrestler in the UFC, which is surprising. He's very loose and relaxed when he's exchanging on the feet. You don't see him rushing things. Some of that is that new toy, something that's fun. But I will warn him and all wrestlers together. Yes, it's very important to become a good striker, but don't fall in love with, I've been wrestling for 20 years. It gets boring after a while. I've been doing this forever. Here's a new thing. I start knocking people out. It feels fun, and it's, and it's something new.
It's less work.
It's less work too. And it's in a lot of times you've seen so many wrestlers not wrestling late in their career. And we've talked about this. It's simply because wrestling is extremely hard to do. And it's hard to stay at that level and grind. And you have a guy who's 40 grinding and still wrestling. That's incredible, because it's rare, and nobody wants to train takedowns, drilling takedowns, because you have to drill, and you can't, you can still compete in jiu-jitsu. You can't really compete in wrestling. I mean, unless you're on the international, you're really good. But like, there isn't like a local. And I, before someone asks me, like, guys, I know about the tournaments where old men wrestling. Like, I get that. I'm talking about like guys fighting in MMA. So before you come at me, you can go to this tournament, and they have the seniors, and it's like has been high schoolers who wants to still wrestle. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So that's why it's hard. But at this point in his career, he still needs to wrestle a lot. But one thing that helps him, his striking, is the threat of his takedowns opened up opportunity for him to land that he might not be able to land if he didn't have that wrestling. He's shown he has power. 27, he's kind of coming into his power, and we already talked about his wrestling. It's elite of the elite. I'm not getting, you want to debate somebody else, go for it, but he's elite in the club. The thing about him is about his entries. Obviously, he's got elite entries, but even if he shoots and he doesn't get it, he's got those long arms. He has like the Michael Chiesa thing going, where he can kind of just still scoop up things he didn't have. He has incredible hip control, good upper body takedowns and throws. Good luck trying to take him down. He's got a perfect front headlock game. Like, that's something he does so much, even when he was in wrestling, like making you pay for missed shots. And he's a submission threat. But the one thing about him is he was always a very creative, little bit of funk in him, where he'll roll to his back and he'll take chances because he's so confident. Like, oh, all right, like I can still bridge right out of this, or something, that he's not scared to go to his back. Now, Tresean Gore is a big guy. He's a good athlete. He's well-rounded. He's had some success in MMA. I mean, you're talking about a guy that, what was he? I know he had success on the Ultimate Fighter show. He didn't win it. He got hurt, so he couldn't compete.
He got hurt. He stepped in as a replacement. Like, he had been a semifinalist, and he stepped in to the final on an injury. But yeah, he'd been successful. He beat Gilbert Urbina.
He won, and then Urbina replaced him.
Thank you.
Brian Battle won. And
he made the finals, but then he ended up fighting Brian Battle in his actual debut anyway, and he lost the battle. So in my mind, he's the runner-up, but he's not technically the runner-up.
Yeah. But anyways, he's had success. He's pretty well-rounded. He's elusive. He's a good striker. He can fight out of both stances. He's accurate, sound striker. He works behind a jab. He's got plus power, good kicking game, hard body kicks, good calf kicks, though he can throw them naked. He can wrestle. He wrestled a lot in the Tough House. Had some slick back takes on the Tough. Not much of a submission threat, but though he did catch Josh Fremd with a beautifully timed guillotine in his last fight. But you have to be worried about his chin, as he got starched by Cody Brundage, which is not a loss that has aged well. So both guys have, if we're being honest, both guys have major tools that have a bit of a challenge in this fight. So Gore likes to kick to the body. Will he want to kick to the body against a guy like Nickal, who can catch a kick and just throw you to the ground so easily? Like, do you really want to make it even easier for him to get takedowns? Nickal, he can obviously shoot, but does he want to shoot? Like, he's going to set it up, because we just saw that Gore can snatch on a guillotine, and it's a danger for him to shoot in right on his hips. If Nickal throws hard strikes from the outside, and gets to the clinch, I think that'd be a safer route. Get to the clinch, get it down there, make a knee tap, a slide by, a lateral drop, something like that. I do think this is, when we were talking about Bo Nickal, like you asked me, like, hey, give me a line, like he fights this guy, then this guy, then that guy, and this guy. To me, Gore's is a couple steps up before I wouldn't have Nickal fighting him. Yeah, I would have had guys a little bit lower than Gore. Like this is a pretty step up in competition. But I still think the fight hits the ground. I think Gore tries like scramble because he knows he doesn't want to be on bottom with Nickal, and I actually think he makes a mistake, and I think Nickal is going to catch him in a head attack. I think like a guillotine, a darce, some kind of gator roll, some kind of something, and I think Nickal gets him out in the very first round. So give me Bo Nickal by first round submission.
Yeah, I love the breakdown there. I agree. Like I actually think Gore is a reasonable step up. Like I wouldn't go any further than this. Like it's helped by the fact that Gore himself is pretty green. Like he's only been doing this for a couple of years. His own professional record is pretty sparse. It's hard not to get overexcited about a prospect like Nickal, but there are huge questions that have yet to be answered. I mean, nobody's hit him squarely yet. We have no idea what it will look like. I mean, even if Gore like catches him with like a clean punch early, even if Nickal isn't like rocked and on skates, it may be just the moment that we realize, oh man, this guy doesn't like getting punched in the face. Like it changed how he got past Gore anyway, but we know now that this might be a problem, or we don't know what it looks like when he goes past 3 minutes of a fight. Like wrestling builds a certain type of cardiovascular endurance, and it's unmatched for that type of thing, but we don't know what it will look like if Nickal goes past the first round. I mean, he's fighting around the same weights where he wrestled. He won the NCAAs twice at 184 and once at 197. He doesn't look like a guy that cuts Alex Pereira types of weight to make weight, but we don't know what it'll look like. We might, there have been some high level wrestlers that came over to MMA and turned out to have terrible gas tanks. We don't know. So all I want out of this would be for Tresean Gore to at least answer a couple of those questions. Like, I don't think Nickal has absorbed a significant strike in either of his Contender Series fights plus his fight with Pickett. Like, just nobody's touched him. I want to know what that looks like. I want to know how he responds to getting hit. The way he's won his fights, like he's definitely stretching his legs in terms of striking. Like you put it perfectly. It's a new toy. Like if he knows he can take Zach Borrego down whenever he wants, like why not jump in with a flying knee or come in behind a huge like Superman punch or something? I'd like to see him win this fight without resorting to something that would get him in a ton of trouble against a better fighter. Because one of his Contender Series fights, I can't remember which one it was, but like he kind of closed the distance with just like a huge overhand before changing levels. Donovan Beard wasn't going to do anything about that, but a lot of top 15 middleweights might have swatted him out of the air with like a nice counter. Unless Nickal makes a mistake, this is his fight to win, probably in the first round, probably however he wants, like in terms of either TKO by ground and pound or submission. And that's my pick here. Give me Nickal by first round sub as well. Though if he decides, like, if Gore just turtles up and Nickal throws 2 more punches and the ref dives in, that wouldn't shock me either. Next up on the UFC 290 main card is a lightweight matchup between Jalen Turner and Dan Hooker. And this is a matchup that the UFC had to put together because Jalen Turner's destiny is to fight every Australian fighter in the UFC. And Dan Hooker's destiny is to fight all the biggest lightweights on the planet. So they had to meet eventually. They're going to meet this Saturday in Las Vegas. So let's get to know him a little bit better. Turner, 28-year-old Californian, is 13-6 overall. He is 6-3 since joining the UFC out of the second season of Dana White's Contender Series. 6-3 overall, 5-2 at lightweight. He debuted at welterweight and then had one fight at 165-pound catchweight. He's been at lightweight ever since, despite being absolutely titanic. He's coming off a loss. It was a split decision against Mateusz Gamrot at UFC 285 back in March. That broke a 5-fight win streak for him. So he's looking to get back in the win column here against Hooker. The 33-year-old New Zealander is 22-12 overall. He is 12-8 in the UFC, 9-4 at lightweight. Opposite of Turner, Hooker has split time at featherweight, which seems really improbable when you see how big the guy is. But since settling in at lightweight more or less permanently, he has gone 9-4. He won his last time out. It was a second round TKO of Claudio Puelles at UFC 281 last November. So both gentlemen in need of a win here. Your favorite is Turner. He is minus 240, Hooker plus 200. Keith, Jalen Turner has 6 wins in the UFC, and 4 of the 6 are over fighters from Australia or New Zealand. He is the wrecking ball of oceanic fighters. Dan Hooker, I understand why the guy stayed at featherweight so long, because every time he goes up to lightweight, they give him someone like James Vick or Jalen Turner.
Yeah.
Like every time, like he's a huge guy, and every time he goes up to lightweight, he needs a ladder to like look at his opponent in the eye. Who gets it done here? And despite the loss to Gamrot, do you still have any belief in Turner as a future contender at 155?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If anything, I actually feel, being how competitive that fight was, I feel better about him. And Hooker, you mentioned him being at 145. He looks better at 155, even though it's tougher matchups. I mean, he looked terrible at 145. Hooker, it's nice to see him get a win in his last fight, but it's still, we would give it up on him. And I mean, like, not you and me, but all the MMA community. But he's a strong striker, accurate, long range strikes, plus power. Got some pretty good footwork. He's always been very good at getting his opponents to chase him, and then he stops and beats them to the point of contact. He did that very well against Paul Felder. He did it against Nasrat Haqparast. He had some success in the fight. He doesn't Poirier doing that. He uses his size well with distance, fight from distance. His legendary check left hook is something that he does well to keep his distance. He can hit while backing up, which is pretty impressive. He likes to toss a lot of knees out as just kind of a range checker, kind of like letting his opponent know what you're coming in. That's what you're going to get hit with. Strong kicking game. I mean, go back to the Ali Quinta fight. They destroyed Ali Quinta with calf kicks. Teep kicks come up the middle are a big part of his game. A lot of things coming straight up the middle is a big part of his game. But due to his long leg kicks, it's a big target. I mean, it's been a long time ago, but like Edson Barbosa murdered him with calf kicks and just like a legendary beatdown. One thing that Hooker doesn't get enough credit for, and a lot of this is just stereotyping, the Australia, New Zealand type fighters, is he never gets a credit for his wrestling. He's good at like getting the clinch, dropping down the hips, or hitting a slide bar or something like that. But he also shoot through the hips. I mean, he took down Dustin Poirier 4 times. He's good at catching and kick. He's hard to take down himself because he has that like tall man's defense where you lift him up, he's still on the canvas. He also gets like a wide base and lands elbows. He showed against Claudio Puelles, he's tough to get down, he's tough to submit. One concern I have about Hooker is just the amount of damage he's taken over the years. I mean, you talk about the Barbosa fight, the Poirier fight, the Felder, Chandler starched them. Arnold Allen beat him up bad. So his chin could suddenly fall apart, and we might see that this fight. But one thing I do like, his chin looks better at 155, which got crazy because he got knocked out by Michael Chandler, but the experiment at 145 was terrible. Now, we talk about 155. You talk about someone being bigger than Hooker. I still can't believe Jalen Turner still fights at 155. Like how he makes weight is incredible.
We just finished talking about one of the cool things about Bo Nickal is that he's a long and lanky guy. He's a middleweight, and Turner is 2 inches taller and has a greater reach.
Yeah, there you go. Like he could be a light heavyweight.
Easy.
Yeah.
He looks like John Jones.
Yeah. One thing to bring up about moving up to 197 for Bo Nickal when he wrestled his senior year in college. A lot of that actually had to do with just Penn State being so loaded and Bo Nickal being like so dominant that he could go up to 197 and still have like another guy come in the lineup and kill it. Because Bo was killing it any weight class back then. But back to Turner, He's a long and lengthy fighter. He's a deadly striker, fast hands, very accurate, likes to pick apart from range. One thing I've noted of him, he just kind of touches until he sees an open, then he explodes, and he's like a viper. This helps his cardio, being that the guy who cuts probably has to cut a lot of weight because of how big he is. Massive power, nice kicks, mean body kicks. I love his teep kicks, his push kicks. He will sneak in a takedown. Like he's a little underrated offensive wrestler himself, but he's a weak defensive wrestler. But what he showed against Gamrot is he's a very hard to hold down. He'll kind of just toss up some submission attacks, beam with those long legs and everything, and to kind of get a scramble to start, and then he gets up from that. Due to his length, he can still get those submissions though. Like he got back-to-back submissions against Brock Weaver and Joris Medish. He subbed Brad Riddell with the guillotine, so he showed he never got a lot of credit for his ground game, but something he's actually excelled at a lot lately. As far as prediction goes, I think Hooker better wrestle, and he better wrestle early and a lot, because if he strikes for Turner, I think Turner knocks him out. I think Hooker will get Turner down, but I think Turner's going to work back to his feet, and I think eventually he's going to catch him, and I think he lands a big shot. I think he starches Hooker. I'm going to say it happens late in the first round. Give me Turner by first round. I'll say first round KO.
Yeah, I like a lot of the analysis you put out there. One of the coolest things about Turner is how he has continued to improve and shore up the deficiencies in his game. Like you pointed out, he's still takedown defense is always going to be a deficiency when you're a 6'3" lightweight and like 5 feet of that is legs. Like when your pants like have like a 49-inch inseam. Like, but his ability to create scrambles, his get up game has definitely improved. So he has shored up that weakness to the extent that it is feasible under the type of body that he has. Like the Jalen Turner that got taken down with ease and held down by Matt Frivola for 3 rounds 4 years ago no longer exists. Like I like Frivola as a fighter. I think he's a good fighter, but I think Turner would dust him now. Like Frivola would take him down. Turner would get back up. He'd keep getting back up, and he'd catch him with something. That's just
probably.
And I didn't write Turner all the way off after that fight, but I went, okay, there's a hard cap to what he can do at 155. But yeah, since then he's shored up that weakness or turned it into a strength to the extent he's able to. It turns out that as big as he is, his long limbs create matchup problems on the ground, and he is a fast mover on the ground. I'm still blown away by how quickly he took Uros Medic's back, like sank in the hooks, like slapped on the choke in their fight. It was an eye opener for me. It's also impressive that a guy as huge as he is, that again, I don't know what his walking weight is, but I would guess that it's close to 200 pounds. If Max Holloway walks around at 190, I would guess that Turner is at least there. He's proven that he can go 3 rounds at least in a reasonably paced fight and not gas out. He's still on his upswing. I don't even think he's in his true competitive prime yet. Whereas Hooker, as impressive as he is, and I do think he's one of the more underrated competitors at lightweight over the last few years, at the very best, he's got to be at the tail end of it. He's 33, but it's an old 33. You outlined it. He's taken a ton of punishment in some of his fights. It's got to start telling on him eventually, and maybe this is the fight where it does. If he's smart, he'll start mixing in takedowns early and often, but even if he does, I just don't think he can hold Turner down. I don't think it's going to stop what Turner does. It's just going to slow it down. I'm with you, man. I would love to have a little more disagreement here, but on a card full of 2-1 all the way up to 14-1 favorites, like I'm not going to be contrarian just to be contrarian. I think Turner's the better fighter, and his trajectory is headed in a positive direction where like Hooker might start getting old any day here. I've got Turner by first round TKO as well, and I'm going to say it probably ends up on the ground. Like either Turner sweeps Hooker and then pounds him out, or yeah, just he knocks down Hooker and falls into the ground. But yeah, Turner by first round TKO on the ground. Third from the top at UFC 290 is a high-level middleweight matchup between former champ Robert Whittaker and the surging Dricus du Plessis. Whittaker, the 32-year-old New Zealand-born Australian native, is 24-6 overall. He is 15-4 since joining the UFC as the winner of the Smashes season of The Ultimate Fighter over a decade ago. 15-4 in the UFC. Worth noting that he started at welterweight, then moved up to middleweight. Since moving up to middleweight, he is 12-2. Those two losses both being to Israel Adesanya. And he is, of course, a former interim champ, then a former undisputed champ. He won his last time out. It was a unanimous decision victory over Marvin Vettori last September at UFC Fight Night Gone versus Tuivasa. Prior to that, he had lost to Adesanya in his bid to win back the title. He'll look to make it 2 in a row and establish himself as still a factor in the middleweight title picture, even if I'm sure he was bummed when Alex Pereira said he was moving up to light heavyweight. And opposing him in that endeavor will be du Plessis. 29-year-old South African is 19-2 overall. He is 5-0 since joining the UFC as a former KSW welterweight champ and a former 2-division champ at middleweight and welterweight in South Africa's EFC promotion. He fought most recently at UFC 285 in March, where he hammered Derek Brunson into a buzzer-beating corner stoppage in the second round. Prior to that, he tapped out Darren Till in the third round. He's on a 5-fight win streak in the UFC, and at least the last 3 of them have been over top 15 quality opposition. Here he gets what may actually turn out to be a title eliminator. He is, however, not favored to get it done. Keith, Whittaker is the favorite. Tell me what the line is.
Well, I know it's got to be more than plus 200.
Well, give me the line on Whittaker, and it is greater than minus 200.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Minus, not plus.
Yeah.
Well, I just know that because you said it earlier about the more than 2-1 favorite. Negative 240.
Whittaker minus 410. du Plessis plus 310. I mean, here we go. Based on previous evidence, Whittaker is 12-2 at middleweight. He's only lost to Adesanya. The last fight with Adesanya, I mean, it wasn't close, but it was competitive. He was there the whole time. And everyone else, I mean, Whittaker has either just really, really schooled or at least handled without too much drama. But at the same time, du Plessis rocketing up the rankings. I was surprised that this line was as wide as it was. I figured it would be right around minus 200 for Whittaker, just as the former champ.
Negative 225, something like that. Yeah,
I mean, du Plessis has kind of been defying the odds ever since he's been in the UFC. Like, speaking for myself, I wasn't that high on him. Like, I don't think that highly of EFC. It just hasn't. It's mostly sent people who weren't ready for the UFC to the UFC. His best achievements in KSW is going 1-1 with Roberto Soldic, who, I mean, I love Roberto Soldic. He's the Robbie Lawler of Central Europe, but he's also really best at welterweight. Du Plessis has done way more than I expected. And I mean, here he is. Who do you favor in this one?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's a weird matchup to begin with. I just don't understand the UFC's logic of making this matchup when you have a champion who doesn't have a lot of contenders to fight. Pereira moving up makes it even less because you can't do the trilogy fight with Adesanya and Pereira. And do you really? I don't get du Plessis versus Adesanya made so much sense. It was marketable to have Whittaker, and now Whittaker be over 4-1 favorite, so most likely going to win. To knock off set up a third fight with Whittaker again? I mean, it just doesn't. I mean, yes, I understand fans are excited about it because it's seeing 2 top guys fight each other, but logistically, I don't think it was a smart move. I mean, maybe for Sean Strickland, like if Whittaker wins, maybe Sean Strickland, coming off a win and main event kind of jumps the line and he can talk himself into a title shot. But yeah. Anyways, as far as who wins, I'm constantly waiting for Whitaker to suddenly just fall off due to injuries that he's had. I mean, he's always injured. The amount of fights he's had to pull out, add in all the wars he's been in. Like, this could be the fight where suddenly he's a shot fighter. Obviously, I'm not guessing that because, like you mentioned, he's other than Israel Adesanya recently, he's kind of handled everybody and not much. What's the word? Like, not much challenge, I guess. So like even a guy like Cannonier kind of won easily. Vittori, Whitaker, he's a very technically sound striker. Everything comes behind a jab. He loves to double up his jab. He sets up his offense with his jab. He defends his attacks defensively by jabbing him, beating to the point of contact with a jab. He kind of does the same thing a little bit with the overhand right. He just kind of wings it at his opponent and keep distance with it. He's good at timing his opponent's attacks. It's something that he was able to do against Yoel Romero, Jared Cannonier, Marvin Vittori, all of them. He's got good head movement, and he just holds his ground in the slips, and that's why he sets himself in range for that legendary left hook he has. He's very good at misdirection. A perfect one is where he'll dart to his left and then like hook kick to the right on the other side. I call it a lot the Robert Whitaker high kick where you dip one way and you throw the kick the other side where they think you're coming with something on the left side and he throws something on the right instead. We talked about this in the past, but he is a lot meaner and he has more of a mean streak in him than you would think based on his personality and the way he talks and like he's gonna be a super nice guy during media week. He's not gonna talk any trash. He's gonna say nice things about Duplessis. Like that's gotta be Rob Whitaker, Yeah. But you can see the mean streak when he gets inside, mean uppercuts, mean elbows, but really like things like throwing the oblique kicks that John Jones does. He's something that he likes to do too. He generates a lot of power by being heavy on that front foot like a boxer, which leaves him open to leg kicks. I mean, that's what happened in the first Romero fight. But he has power because he does lose some power because he lunges and overreaches sometimes. He's strong in the clinch. He likes, like I mentioned before, he likes to get some elbows. One of the biggest weaknesses, and I've said this in the past, is he's always trying to like even the score. If you blast him with something, he'll chase a punch and to get a shot. And that actually what led to him getting knocked out about Israel Adesanya. He put himself in a bad position and Adesanya knocked him out in the first round. He's a good wrestler. And what I love is before I talked about that the wrestling went away from him, but not recently. He's added the wrestling back again, which I think is a good thing. And which is so rare to see a guy get older and then add wrestling back to his game.
After knee injuries. Yeah. Which might be why he wasn't wrestling. Mm-hmm. It could have been a trust thing. It could have been like, he's a little shaky on it. Wasn't able to drill something. But, I mean, he took down Darren Till. He took down Kelvin Gastelum 4 times. He took down Izzy 4 times. He took down Marvin Vittori. So it's something that he's going back to. And I think it makes him a much more complete fighter. Incredible takedown defense against Yoel Romero. Even more impressive considering he had no ACL at that time. Good top game. Busy ground and pound if he's on top. Duplessis I've never been high on him. But to his defense, he just keeps finding ways to win. And like, obviously the odds are not too high on him either, but he's much bigger than Robert Whitaker. Like he's a true middleweight where Robert Whitaker is undersized. Like if Duplessis fought at light heavyweight, it wouldn't surprise me. Like he's not like overly big, but he's not Alex Bahia, but I'm saying like he's just, he's got a frame that looks like he could even carry more muscle if he wanted to go up to 205.
Yeah. Possibly. He's a pressure striker. He's got some good output. He can fight out of both stances. He has deceivingly long arms, which has been pointed out. It kind of keeps him to land when his opponents thinks they're out of range. He attacks with combos, has nice power. He does load up a little bit and give out some tells. He got like I said, I don't think he's the biggest power puncher, but we saw him. He got a KO win over Marcus Perez. He got a KO win over Trevin Giles. And then he got a win over Derek Brunson, which is, obviously a pretty impressive win. He'll occasionally throw out some spinning attacks, which I'm not crazy about. He has some good calf kicks, but when it comes to his striking, like I talk about all the good offensive, he has major defensive holes. He backs straight up. He's been rocked so many times. And that's because he pillars. he hates fighting off his back foot. Now he will wrestle a little bit, but I wouldn't call him a wrestler. Now he did take down Darren Till, but like my 8-year-old son was in the wrestling room this week, so he might be able to take down Darren Till now. So he battered Till on the ground. To his credit, he did take down Derek Brunson, so that's definitely even more impressive when it comes to wrestling. And he has some vicious ground and pound, and he has he has a killer instinct. He's opportunistic. I like Whitaker here. I think he's better than him everywhere. I think he jabs him up. I think he lands some big shots. I keep thinking about that high kick, and I keep thinking of seeing it happen. I want to take Whitaker by knockout, but he doesn't really knock anybody out. But I'll say Whitaker wins a lopsided decision.
Yeah, if you're a fan of mixed martial arts, I find it hard to imagine you could come up with a reason not to like Robert Whitaker. He is
absolutely
he's just in terms of being one of the nicest dudes in the sport outside of the cage, and I mean, it's a little Dustin Poirier like, where outside of the cage, he's just a cordial dude, a family man, one of the people you'd be most surprised to see like a vicious crime report about. And then
Deacon.
Yeah. In the cage, just a high level fighter and a consistently exciting one. Like what's not to like about Robert Whitaker? One thing I find really admirable about him is that he's just continued to refine his game, even though, I mean, at this point, he's been a championship level fighter for, over 5 years, just continues to add little wrinkles to his game. We've mentioned a couple times here that outside of Israel Adesanya, he's kind of handled everyone else at middleweight, and he's done it in a way, it's almost that he does to everyone else, at least on the feet, what Adesanya does to him. Like, it just becomes real obvious that he has them figured out, and while he maybe made a few adjustments, he had them figured out in the training room before they even got there. Like, he comes to these fights with new wrinkles for different fighters. Like when he fought Till a couple of years ago, and he caught Till a couple times with like those little short elbows when Till would come inside, and he just clearly he and his team had done the tape study. They saw Till's tendencies, and they're like, you can catch him with this. And I mean, there was one exchange where he nailed him with like 3 of them in a row, and Till kept doing the same damn thing until like goes steps away, confused, checks to see if he's bleeding. Like, what the hell did you just do to me? Like, that's the coolness of Robert Whitaker. And you're right. There's always the chance that the wheels are going to fall off at any moment. He's an old 32. He's been fighting at a high level for a long time because, again, he's been in the UFC for almost 11 years now, and he came in as a pretty impressive tough winner. So he was fighting pretty high level guys right off the bat. I mean, he comes into the UFC, and I mean, he's fighting Stephen Thompson in his 4th fight. Like, so at any moment we could see him slow down significantly, or see his gas tank like really sapped, or just see his chin gone. That there's always that possibility. But here, I think the matchup really does favor him against Du Plessis. I mean, I don't think it favors him 4-1 against Du Plessis, but the thing about Du Plessis is, on the one hand, yeah, he's accomplished a hell of a lot more than I would have expected. But where all of Whitaker's wins at middleweight have been relatively breezy and drama-free, Du Plessis' 5-0 run in the UFC is not as clean as the 5-0 numbers would make it seem. Like, Trevin Giles won the first round against him, and Du Plessis had to come back. Brad Tavares won the first round against him, and Du Plessis had to come back. He ended up taking down Brunson in their fight, but in the first round, Brunson slammed him.
That's right.
And Du Plessis lost that round and had to come back, and he did. And I mean, clearly he comes back with a vengeance because he savaged Brunson in the second round. He knocked out Giles in the second round. But Whitaker's a very good first round fighter. He's not a guy that needs to. He's not a guy that needs to find his bearings, knock off the rust, make adjustments. He's not measuring people in the first round in the way of a Peter Yan or a John Jones. He's coming at him, and maybe that's to do with how exhaustively prepared he is. Maybe he just feels like he's ready to go, but that could spell trouble for Du Plessis, because Du Plessis demonstrably does have to come back in a lot of his fights, I see, Whittaker probably kind of lighting him up in the first round. It'll be interesting to see if Duplessis tries to bring this fight to the ground. If he can get Whittaker down, then we have a whole different fight, a whole different dynamic. I think it changes the striking from there on out. But I think he's gonna have a hard time with that unless Whittaker is really diminished. I like Whittaker. I like him a lot. I like him in this fight specifically because of Duplessis' tendencies. Like, considering that Whittaker so clearly studies and preps for his opponent's striking tendencies, the kind of holes that Duplessis has demonstrated in his striking, I'm sure Whittaker is going to have something for him here. Did you say you had Whittaker by decision? Yeah. I mean, Duplessis has taken. I mean, he's gotten lit up by some pretty heavy hitters and made it to the end. I'm not going to pick the finish here either, but give me Whittaker by a pretty comfortable decision that, unfortunately for the UFC, snuffs out that rising contender shine that Duplessis had. Duplessis still only 29. He's got plenty of time to go back to the drawing board and win 3 or 4 more fights in a row and get back in the picture. But I think this will be a bit of a wasted opportunity. I mean, between Duplessis and Strickland, you had 2 guys that it was going to be one hell of a PR campaign if they got a shot at Adesanya. Duplessis trolling Adesanya with the whole "I'm the real African here, you left." That was going to get under Adesanya's skin. He is not a guy who laughs at himself easily. Man, Strickland, when he was getting ready to fight Alex Pereira, and Strickland was zinging stuff with Adesanya that was making Adesanya mad, even though they weren't fighting that night.
And it was like making fun of like watching anime and stuff, he's like stupid stuff. Yeah,
he's like, your Pornhub folder is full of cartoons. I'd never lose to a dude that jacks at the cartoons. Like, dude, that's one of my favorite one-liners in MMA trash talk history. It was so good. Even though I think Adesanya would destroy Strickland, it made me want to see it. Oh
God, yes, he would.
Anyway, yeah, I've got Whittaker by a pretty lopsided decision as well, and it won't move Whittaker much closer to a fight with Adesanya, but it will move Duplessis much further away. The co-main event of UFC 290 is a men's flyweight title fight between defending champ Brandon Moreno and challenger Alexandre Pantoja. Moreno, the 29-year-old Mexican, is 21-6-2 overall. He's 10-3-2 in the UFC. He is, of course, your flyweight champ. He won back his title in January at UFC 283 with a doctor stoppage between rounds of his ultimate rival, Davison Figueiredo. This will be the first defense of his at least second title run. And the challenger is Pantoja. 33-year-old Brazilian is 25-5 overall. He's 9-3 in the UFC. He's on a 3-fight win streak. The last time he lost was almost exactly 3 years ago. He dropped a unanimous decision to Askar Askarov. Since then, he has a unanimous decision win over Manel Kopp, a second-round submission of Brandon Royval, and most recently, last July at UFC 277, a first-round submission of Alex Perez, whom he caught with a neck crank in the first round. Pantoja steps in here. He is the underdog, of course. Moreno is -200. Pantoja +170, and again, for what it's worth, -200 is as close a line as you're going to find this fight in any fight that's not a rematch of a draw. So, that's what we've got. Keith, the Moreno versus Figueiredo rivalry is finally over. It's hard to complain too much about because it gave us 4 fights that all ranged from good to all-time great.
Yeah.
But it did put the rest of the division on hold for a long time. Pantoja is here. He's on a 3-fight win streak over all top 10 guys. So definitely has a great case for it. But regardless of what they've accomplished or what kind of streak they're on, of everybody in the flyweight division, is Pantoja the guy that you think would probably have the best chance of beating Moreno this Saturday? Or is there someone out there that you're like,
that's tough. Right now on Saturday. Let me pull up. I got.
Well, I'll call out 3 names for you.
Yeah. Read out the names. I wasn't prepared for that question.
Kai Kara France, just off the cuff.
No.
Brandon Royval.
No.
Manel Kopp.
No.
Amir Albazi, who just beat Car France. He's on he's on the UFC as well.
No.
Yeah. Askarov.
No.
All right. I mean, that's basically it.
Yeah, I guess the answer is yes. Yes.
I guess that's basically it. That like the rest of the top 10 is people that was already beaten bad. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those rare occasions where it all aligns. Pantoja is as deserving as anybody on paper, and just informally off the top of the head, I agree with you. Pantoja is the guy that I think probably has the best chance of beating Moreno. I mean, Kopp, there's always the one thing. Like, Kopp probably has the best one-shot power of anybody.
Yeah, that's why I was a little hesitant. Yeah.
But aside from that, it'd be Pantoja for me. I mean, how do you see this one going?
What was the odds again?
-200, +170.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm glad it wasn't like outrageous, considering one guy is 2-0 against the other guy. You know, I mean, I know one was the Ultimate Fighter, and that's not with your team, not with a full camp. I understand that. Finding out who you're fighting 3 days in advance, whatever.
Yeah, I kind of buried the lead. Pantoja has already beaten Moreno twice.
Yeah. And one of them was 5 years ago, and that was a very young Brandon Moreno, very different fighter. I mean, both of them are really different, especially like Pantoja is much better on the feet than he was back then.
Mm-hmm.
To me, they're kind of irrelevant, the fights. It's one of those ones when you go back, it's, some fights that are like, oh, they fought 7, like if Yuri Prohaska and Vadim Nemkov fought again, go back to their fight from
in Ryzen at heavyweight. Yeah,
like that. Obviously,
Victoria versus Adesanya one.
Yeah, that's different because they're in the UFC and everything, but still, like they're so much more advanced now. And they were really prospects then. I mean, one of them, the Ultimate Fighter show, that was the whole point. Like, so. Who do I think is going to win this fight? Brandon Moreno is really good. I mean, well, obviously flyweight. We talk about pound for pound, who's the best, this and that, and whatever. Like flyweight is as talented as it comes. Like the champion of flyweight is could be the pound for pound champion, and I understand like pound for pound is so debatable and this and that, and it's so subjective and everything. But my point is like if someone wants to argue to me that the most talented guy is Brandon Moreno, I'm not going to argue against it. That's my point. And if Pantoja beat him, same thing. So Moreno, he's so well-rounded. He's a great boxer, fast hands. He's got an elite jab. So good at it. He's such a good jab. He generates good power because he sits on his punches. He also lines up his shots really well by winning foot battles. We talked about that in the past. He's technically sound defensively. Good head movement, bob and weave style. He also has that like the Bernard Hopkins shoulder rolls. It's just such a boxing base. Brandon Moreno is exactly what the UFC wanted a Mexican star to be, even to the boxing. Like born and lives in Mexico, trains in Mexico, like everything they wanted. Such a great kick game, great high kick. Slips. He does that like slips to the left or the high kick on the right, similar to what we talked about Rob Whitaker. He crushed Car France with a body kick. He doesn't check leg kicks. I mean, Figueroa had success in their fights with him with leg kicks. He also, for a guy who's the champion, he's been dropped a lot. I mean, Figgy dropped him a couple times in that third fight. He's an underrated wrestler, very fast entries, good at cutting the corner, so quick. Like he's in and turning the corner and driving it down before his opponent even realized that he's shot. He took Figueroa down 4 times in like all their fights. Good at winning scrambles. If you take him down, he's hard to hold down. He loves like Granby rolls and just trying to get a scramble happen. Good back takes. He has a submission threat. I mean, he sub Figueroa in their second fight, and he's hard to submit. Pantoja is well-rounded, very aggressive on the feet. He's a boxer, fast hands. He gets in the pocket. He unloads big shots. He loves a brawl. Like he loves to get in there and just hold his ground and just see who's, standing. That's one is because he doesn't have much head movement. He also trusts his chin more than his opponents, and he's willing to take that gamble. And he's got huge power for a flyweight. We talked about Manel Kopp being a guy who could start someone, and I definitely think Manel Kopp's the biggest puncher in that division. Him and Figueiredo and Moreno's up there too. But you go back to like the Wilson Hayes and the Matt Chanel fights. Pantoja, people are so worried about his grappling, he can lace you and put you out too. He is heavy on his front foot, which generates power, but it's open to leg kicks, and that's a big problem against someone like Moreno, whose leg kicks are a big part of his game. He also can be very wild.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, that's but it's like how do you train for that? He comes at you. He just what he doesn't care if you take him down, so he can throw power, and he's not worried about getting hurt. So he's a very underrated wrestler. He loves body lock takedowns. Probably. Like, who has better back takes in all of MMA than Pantoja? Even I kind of put you on the spot. Like,
there might not be any, but he's on the Mount Rushmore. Like,
he's in the club.
He's in the club. I mean, because the other guys I would have put in the conversation, like Michael Chiesa, are kind of fading. Like right now, he's probably the best.
I just always think about him as backpacking, like he goes around his house and he's just backpacking like his people, and he sees somebody just like that team just gets together and just like, all right, get on each other's back and like just wrestle for there. Yeah. That's how they start. You stand up, you're on his back against the cage. Okay, wrestle. It seems like he's always there.
The backpack drill.
Yeah, he's got 10 submission wins. I mean, he crushed Alec Perez with a neck crank.
Yeah.
The win over Alex Perez hasn't aged too well, so take that what it's worth. But still, I mean, it's a former title challenger.
Mm-hmm.
He can get subs everywhere, from the back, from on top. Wide variety in his subs too. Like, he's got arm bars, he's got guillotines, heel hooks. If you take him down, he's got a good get up game. Though he can play BJ a little bit too much for my liking, but he can also sweep off his back. So before we pick a winner of who wins this matchup, should we pick how the alternate it would do against them? Who the guy who's weighing in?
Tell us who it is.
Oh, it's Figueiredo. Just so we can have a fifth fight with him and Moreno. Ben, I'm joking. Okay, he's not weighing in.
I was gonna say, I was like, why don't you tell me who it is? Because I was like, I didn't know about this. Like, what the hell? All right, good.
Just joking.
You totally got me going on that one.
Yeah, you have to do WWE. That's the thing. You got to do WWE style though. Like no, Pantoja.
My God, that's Davidson Figueiredo's music.
Yeah, Pantoja comes out and Figueiredo just attacks him from behind, steals his shot. Or does like Figueiredo and Moreno, like if they're fighting, do they both have like a Money in the Bank thing where they can cash in anytime to fight each other? Just each other. Oh. Like no, you can't fight the guy. I'm cashing it in. All right.
It wouldn't even be money. It would be just like a punch card from Subway where it's like, I got 7 more fights against you.
Yeah. 10th fight, you have to fight somebody else and we can start over again. So obviously, joking aside, we waited a while for Pantoja to get a title shot, but how amazing it is when it's happening right now. A part of me, because I respect these guys so much, kind of wish it was a main event. And that's obviously I'm not dissing Volkanovski and Yair Rodriguez because that's even more incredible fight. But I think both guys are so good. Moreno is so good right now. He's definitely the more technical fighter, but Pantoja is the one who has the power and obviously the submission artist. I almost took Pantoja. It's kind of like a gut feeling, but you know what? Fuck it. I am going to take him. Moreno has never been subbed in his career. He wasn't subbed in their last fight. But I think he makes a mistake, and I think Pantoja jumps on something. I want to say Pantoja catches him with a submission in the second round. Give me Pantoja by second round submission.
Oh, man. I love that pick. I mulled it over. I came close, to picking Pantoja. I went with Moreno, and I'll tell you why. First of all, there's nothing to fault about your breakdown of these guys, like skills and achievements. Like I'm not even going to bother trying to add to that. Flyweight's incredible, all the top. Like you could go down to the 50th best flyweight in the world, and it's still going to be a well-conditioned athlete who's at least pretty good everywhere. You know, meanwhile, you can't even get to like the 12th best heavyweight without getting to someone that has a terrible gas tank or is like one-dimensional or just isn't good at fighting. Yeah, just
12th. I don't know if you go to like 7th.
Anyway, Pantoja, and I've said this a few times, in a division where most of the top 10 are super aggressive fighters, like on top of being skilled, on top of being fast, like a lot of them are really aggressive fighters. Pantoja stands out as being maybe the most aggressive. He is pathologically aggressive on the feet as well as on the ground, and in his insistence on transitioning between the two. I just, any fight with Pantoja in it, even by the standards of a division where you've said many times, draw any two names out of a hat with the top 15 and you've got a great fight. Like where even if you favor one guy, you want to see the fight. It sounds great. Even by the standards of that division, every fight with Pantoja in it is like two cats in a sack. That's my concern, because he fights at a furious pace and his game plan relies on a lot of wrestling and grappling if he has his way. And he's fighting a guy in Moreno that has at least been preparing for 5-round fights for a long time now and has proven he can do them. If Pantoja taps out Moreno in the second round, I mean, it's a hell of a story. It's obviously going to be a hell of a fight. But if he just has Moreno in a world of trouble in the second round and can't finish it, I'm feeling better and better about Moreno as the fight goes along. Like Moreno's incredibly durable.
I agree.
For a guy that comes into his fights like he shot out of a cannon, it's not like he fades late. Like I wouldn't call him a builder in the traditional sense, but at the very least, like he doesn't slow down. I mean, he's been in 5-round fights where he just fought it at a ridiculous pace the whole time. And it's one of the things that made the tiny separation between him and Figueiredo is that he was a little reliable, you know, like Figueiredo would fade first between the two of them, even though Figueiredo, for as Titanic as he has, managed his gas tank really well. Those are the things that make me favor Moreno, especially again as the fight goes along. But I fully expect that Moreno is going to be in trouble at some point in this fight. He's been in trouble at some point in most of his fights. I mean, he has 2 draws in the UFC. He does have like several losses. He's not been a perfect fighter. He's been a fighter that's learned on the job and continues to improve. But being perfect and making no mistakes and being airtight and not giving his opponents like a bit of daylight has never been what he's been about. So Pantoja is going to have his opportunities. And as such an aggressive finisher of a fighter, like a fighter bent on the finish, like he's scary as an underdog, but I am leaning Moreno here to survive some of the worst of what Pantoja can throw at him and probably pull ahead in the later rounds. You know, if we get to the end of the 3rd round and Moreno's down 2-1, I'm not too nervous if I have money on him, because I think Moreno will pull ahead later in the fight. So yeah, give me Moreno by decision, but either way, I mean, pencil this one in for fight of the night.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree. The more rounds favors Moreno. Like 4th, 5th round definitely favors Moreno. You know, I was thinking about what you were talking. You know how we talk about my new job with the UFC is to set the lineup. So as I grow in the UFC and I get a little bit more like confident in the meetings and stuff, this is what I'm gonna like pitch to the UFC. Like every single time flyweights fight, we do it like WWE style. And remember the old lumberjack matches where so all the flyweights from the organization have to come around and have to sit. They got to stand around the octagon, but instead of like them, like, you know, they like you throw a guy out and they all hit him and then throw him back in. Yeah. No, like instead they have to like entertain us in between rounds. Because is there anything you wouldn't want to watch a flyweight do? Like imagine if like in between the 2nd and 3rd round, like you just take like 4 random flyweights and had like a 3-legged race with them.
That'd be awesome.
Or think about like, you know, like in between innings at a baseball game and then like 4 mascots run in like a hot dog costume. Like imagine just had 4 flyweights like like in a mascot costume, just running around the octagon as a competition. Like
that works for me. I mean, dude, one of my years between high school, I went to wrestling camp at Bucknell, and one of the days I went to a basically day-long clinic by the Bonomo brothers, and to kind of break things up in between different segments, they gave out like little prizes of something to any of the wrestlers who could come up with like ninja tricks. So it looked like a cheerleading camp in between wrestling, like they were getting 15 dudes and building giant pyramids, or like 3 guys grabbing like ankles to wrists and like rolling around the cage like a giant wheel. Like that's what I feel like the flyweight games would be like.
Yeah. That's what we need to do. We need to make the flyweight games in between fights and stuff. Just had musical chairs. Imagine that, just musical chairs with the flyweights. Like how entertaining would that be? Or just a dodge. Imagine the flyweights in the dodgeball game.
Oh man, there's a lot of Brazilians that have to be allowed to kick the ball. But yeah.
that's what we need to happen.
Well, please note, male flyweights only. The female flyweight games would be female. It'd be like Kate Luchakagian doing Taibo.
Put in the comments who you think would win the musical chairs of flyweights.
Oh. That brings us to the main event of UFC 290, a featherweight title unification bout between lineal champ Alexander Volkanovski and interim champ Yair Rodriguez. Volkanovski, 34-year-old Australian, is 25-2 overall. He is 12-1 in the UFC. That one loss, of course, was in his most recent outing, where he stepped up from featherweight to lightweight and challenged champion Islam Makhachev. He came out on the wrong end of a unanimous decision there. That snapped a 22-fight win streak for him. He looks to start another one on Saturday against the challenger. Rodriguez, 30-year-old Mexican, is 15-3 with 1 no contest overall. He is 10-2 with 1 no contest in the UFC. Fought most recently at that very same UFC 284 card, where he absolutely thrashed Josh Emmett on the way to a second round submission win, and picked up the interim title that was created while Volkanovski had his shot at glory. Prior to that, he won a truncated UFC on ABC 3 main event against Brian Ortega, as Ortega had to bow out due to a shoulder injury late in the first round. Rodriguez will look to make it 3 in a row in certainly the biggest fight of his career, as he challenges perhaps the best pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. He is, of course, not favored to get it done. Keith, Alexander Volkanovski is your favorite. Take a guess at what the line is on him.
-220.
You would think that 14 fights into the card, you would know to double whatever your first guess was. Alexander Volkanovski, -450. Yair Rodriguez plus 325 on the comeback.
I'm like the guy. I'm the guy at what's that show? I keep betting $1.
Price is Right.
Yeah, $1. Like, holy Christ!
Yeah.
Did they not watch Yair Rodriguez's last fight? Kind of look incredible.
Or any Yair.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Well, in fairness, he is going against Alex Volkanovski. He's pretty good too.
Obviously, this answer might change after Saturday, but right now, instant, quick answer: is Alexander Volkanovski the best fighter in the world?
I think so. I know he lost his last fight. He lost to a 155-pound, but when you have a razor close fight and you're clear, you're really like you're 145, but the guy you're going against is probably a 170-pounder, and you win a very close fight. I mean, you lose a very close fight. Yes,
you give him a harder time than anybody at actual lightweight contenders have. Yeah,
absolutely.
Like, we're talking about a guy that in Makhachev that has destroyed Charles Oliveira, destroyed Bobby Green. Who would be the betting favorite right now if they fought at 155? Charles Oliveira or Alex Volkanovski? And Charles Oliveira is really big. At 145?
No, 155. No, 145.
I'd favor Volkanovski over Oliveira, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I have to watch a lot of tape, but
that's the point. That's the whole point. Like, for example, who would you favor, Charles Oliveira or Leon Edwards at 170?
Yeah,
that's my point. Like most people say Leon Edwards.
Mhm.
So, and I know that's 10-pound difference between 15. That's not perfect, but you get my point.
But yeah, we definitely get the point. I agree with you. I think Alexander Volkanovski is the best fighter in the sport for now, pound for pound. Having said that, I mean, I just asked you about different flyweight challengers' abilities or likelihood of beating Brandon Moreno, and we both seem to lean towards the people that had the greatest one technique, quick strike, finishing ability. We're talking about Manel Kape and Alexandre Pantoja. Here, I don't know about the whole like tit for tat matchup, but in terms of quick strike finishing ability, Jair Rodriguez is about as good as it gets in the sport, period, like let alone in that division. We're talking about a guy who is starting to rack up a pretty legendary highlight reel. I mean, tell me if Rodriguez wins, what it looks like, and then tell me what you think is actually going to happen here.
Yeah, I mean, the way he wins is he'd have a speed advantage, obviously an explosion advantage, and being that Volkanovski went up to 155, it's ironic that he's going to be the much smaller fighter. Like the size difference is too much for him. You know, that's and Volkanovski he's not young. It's always concerning when a guy goes up in weight class and puts on a little bit of size to cut back down. Does that affect him or anything like that? But listen, you're not going to find me saying a lot of negative things about Alex Volkanovski. I'm such a fan of him, and I know we're media, we're not supposed to be that, and but I'm such a fan of Alex Volkanovski. To me, he's like the perfect representative of his. If we were still in like the dark ages and we needed somebody to be that like guy who went in front of TV shows and tried to went on Dr. Phil and tried to convince people that don't ban MMA and stuff, like when Alex Volkanovski, he's like our current Rich Franklin type, where he's just such a good dude, doesn't come off as a fighter. I mean, there's a whole bunch of guys like that, but just one of the guys I think of.
Well, now, if you just sent Volkanovski, Moreno, and Whitaker, you'd be in pretty good shape to send like the A sides of the three top fights here. You'd be pretty good shape.
Yeah, you keep going down. Bo Nickal and maybe not Hooker, but yeah. Turner.
Keep Niko Price like completely away.
Definitely, yeah. Maybe Niko Price is like oldest kid, maybe.
Yeah.
So Volkanovski, he's a short, compact fighter, but despite being short, he has these deceivingly long arms. He has some of the best footwork in MMA. Such good lateral movement. He's good at cutting angles, always getting his opponent guessing when he's going to come in and attack. He uses feints really well. He sets up traps and picks his opponents up. Picks them apart, picking up their timing and stuff. You don't think of him as a pressure fighter, but he kind of does. He's the guy that he's not doing 100 miles an hour on the highway. He's doing like 75. So he's over the speed limit, but he's not catching the state trooper's eye either, but he's getting to his place, quickly. He uses his output to set up his counters. He's good at landing a shot, slipping away from the counter, and then landing the follow-up shot. He's really good at that. Very fast, quick twitch. He's so good at beating his opponents to the point of attack. I love that he switches stances in mid combination. He's always a guessing game with him. He did so well against, getting through the length of Max Holloway. The way he did that, one of them was grabbing the hands and you kind of like to have a little tug of war inside and pulling and then landing short shots. For a guy who's a short guy, he's got a great jab. Which sets up his power shots. I mean, he destroyed, going back a while, but going like Darren Till and Chad Mendes, he destroyed them with his jab. He's got such a good variety in his striking. He's never attacks with the same combination. He's always mixing it up. I love that he rips the body so well. He's so good at getting in and getting out before getting hit. Leg kicks are a big part of his game. Go back to many Max Holloway fights, kicking out the legs of Max Holloway. Never really letting Max Holloway get comfortable at setting. Max Holloway starts to set himself. He's leg kicking him. going after the calves and stuff. He'll throw these like little flick kicks up the middle, just to kind of keep it honest, keep in range. I used to say he didn't have much power. Like that was the one, like, okay, you want to find one flaw in his game. He doesn't have much power, but then he just dropped Makhachev in the last round and they fought. So that might not be the case. Now, again, that 155 might have a little more power up there, but you get my point. Still something we've seen him add a new wrinkle to his game in his last fight. He mixes striking and wrestling together so well. He's a good wrestler, explosive, blast through your hips kind of guy, freakishly strong. Just he's built like a pit bull. He grabs a leg and you're going up for a ride. Despite getting taken down by the bigger and more technical wrestler in Makhachev, who takes down everybody, he showed how hard it was. Like Makhachev didn't get him down easily. Makhachev had to work for every single takedown. He showed very good scramble ability. If he's on top, he's very strong, mean ground and pound. But the biggest thing about him is his mentality. Like he's made for big fights. The moment doesn't get to Alex Volkanovski. He has that say what you want, and I mean this fighting. I don't mean outside because it could be more opposite. But he has that Conor McGregor mentality where it's a big fight. He doesn't seem phased at all. Like he seems like he's built for those moments. I think about like when he was getting submitted against Brian Ortega. He found a way to get out of it. When he almost got knocked out by Chad Mendes, he stayed calm and survived and had that time the biggest win of his career. Even like Makhachev, when taken down and taking his back, he never wilted, almost came back and won a fight. And a lot of people's scorecards did win the fight. So that's something like, even if when you look at the athletic ability and differences in the size and everything that Yair Rodriguez brings to this fight, like Volkanovski has a game plan, he has a confidence, and he's already found a way, or answers to that. Now, Yair Rodriguez is perhaps the best athlete in the UFC. I'm convinced he could join Cirque du Soleil tomorrow. And my wife would want to buy tickets and see him spin around on a ring up in the sky.
Man, you think UFC is expensive? Wait till you try to get some Cirque du Soleil.
Oh, you bet. I never been there.
No, my brothers and sister and I got my mom Cirque du Soleil tickets for like Christmas one year, and we were like, yeah, they're
well, that'd be dope if Yair Rodriguez would be like the best of both worlds. My wife would be happy. I would be happy.
Yeah.
So he's a distance striker with good output, and he's always been a good striker, but lately he's a deadly striker that looks better and better each fight. Super accurate, like great boxing, good jab. I love that he doubles it up, and he has some of the best kicks in the game. They're wicked good. They're amazing. Nice teep kicks, great calf kicks, probably the best body kicks in MMA today. He can also like go to the body, then go quick to the head. I love that he mixes it up. Like he'll go low, then he goes high, kind of gets you guessing. He tosses out those mean oblique kicks, and he has so much variety in his attacks. He's the most creative. You go back to like the Korean Zombie knockout and just crazy things he does. Crazy spinning attacks. I don't think we're going to see a lot of the craziness against Alex Volkanovski. Like I don't think that'd be wise, but I'm just throwing out, his entire game. He will go airborne with like a flying knee or kick or flying spinning back elbow or something, or like who knows. But he's really starting to come into his power. And his takedown defense used to be bad, and it still isn't strong. But when it hits the ground, he has become a threat, which wasn't the case. Everyone always brings up the Frankie Edgar fight when that was like his worst performance in the UFC. He wasn't a threat then. He was on the ground, smothered. Now he kind of gets to the guard. He extends his legs, gets to the point like when guys can't hit him, and then he's blasting elbows from his back, hurting guys, throwing up submission attempts, hitting Josh Emmett with like up kicks and all kinds of stuff. And he's getting taken on his back, and he's winning the exchanges from his back. I think the odds should be what I said. Like I think Volkanovski obviously would be the favorite, being pound for pound king and everything. But I think Rodriguez is much more of a threat than people think he is. He's so dynamic on the feet. He has power. He's mean. His kicks are like so. It's so dangerous. Like for Volkanovski coming in, it's like a Game of Thrones, the wall. They have that big. You watch Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, the big giant wall. Like you know, you got to get through that wall. You know, if you're a wildling and you got to come down, you got to like how you got to get past that. You know, you got to yeah. And sorry for spoiler if you don't watch Game of Thrones, I apologize. But Volk is so smart. He's so intelligent. Yeah. He's short, so he's like the Tyrion Lannister of MMA. Like, you know, he'll find a way to get around that wall.
Yeah.
So and guy, all you nerds out there, like, listen, I did it on the fly, so don't come at me with like, hey, Tyrion never attacked the wall, and it's not a perfect. I was throwing that on the fly, so give me a break. What I think we're going to see Volkanovski, even though Volkanovski is such a great striker and all this, I think he's going to close the distance. I think he's going to find a way to close the distance. And what I think he's going to do, I think we're going to see a lot of pummeling, a lot of like, you know, taking him down, forcing Yair to use energy to get back to his feet. I think he's going to try to wear Yair Rodriguez down for like the very beginning of the fight, maybe like half the fight. It's going to be very heavy wrestling from Volkanovski to kind of zap some of that speed and all that and grind on him. And I think that tires out Rodriguez, so he's not as explosive. And I think Volkanovski, about halfway through the fight, that's when he starts opening up more on the feet. And I think his hands are going to look quicker and faster because Yair's starting to slow down. Yair's been getting taken down. He's worried about takedowns. And that's when Volkanovski starts cutting different angles. You get him guessing again. He's faking like he's going for a takedown, throwing a left hook over the top, things like that, kind of getting guessing. And since that's having success that way, I think eventually just the output and the guessing game will be a little too much for Yair Rodriguez. I actually think we get a late stoppage. I'm going to say, you know, like Volkanovski maybe get a takedown in the 5th round, pinned tired Yair Rodriguez against the cage and just grounds him out. Give me Volkanovski. I'll say 5th round TKO.
All right. I love the breakdown there. I said same as you kind of off the intro. I think Volkanovski is probably the best pound for pound fighter in the sport right now. And ahead of his fight at UFC 284 against Makhachev, where I took him in the substantial upset, I said, I don't know if it's possible for Volkanovski to beat Makhachev just given the physical gulf between them. But if there's a way to do it, there's nobody I'd rather have game planning that for me than kind of Volkanovski's handlers of Eugene Behrman and Joe Lopez. Like if there's a way that you can get a 5'6" like compact dude to beat Islam Makhachev, you know, in his weight class, they're the guys I'd pick to figure it out. He's one of the smartest and most disciplined fighters in the history of the sport. Like there's a certain number of parallels between him and Patricio Pitbull, where they are thriving as undersized guys in a division, thanks to just being able to come up with, well, one, thanks to having remarkable athleticism and excellent fundamentals in all aspects of MMA. But beyond that, just putting together game plans that allow them to overcome those physical challenges and then sticking to them mistake-free for as long as it takes to win the fight. Like they're, you know, two remarkable fighters. And Volkanovski, as much as Rodriguez has improved over the last 5 years, like just I guess he's finally healthy enough on a regular enough basis that, you know, he's fighting more often and getting a chance to shore up his deficiencies. Volkanovski and his team are they're going to know the paths to victory here against Rodriguez. And even if they decide, hey, okay, yeah, we're definitely going to make wrestling a major part of what we do here, knowing the new dangers that Rodriguez poses off his back and in the defense of wrestling, I think they'll even be able to plan around that to like, okay, this is how we're going to control Rodriguez on the ground and keep his hips under us and not afford him opportunities to create scrambles, you know, stand back up. They're going to be able to do that. Volkanovski is an incredible nullifier. It seems as though in a lot of his fights, his opponents become extremely frustrated to be in the cage with him. Like, he lost to Makhachev, and I thought he rightfully lost to Makhachev, but Makhachev was not happy in there. You could just see there's like, I'm not used to guys hurting me like this. I'm not used to guys getting back up when I wrestle him. This guy is frustrating me. Like, how does he keep getting back up? How is he hitting? Max Holloway. Go ahead.
Can I ask you a question real quick? Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, sure.
don't you feel like you picked? I picked Makhachev and you picked Volkanovski, and I almost feel like I picked wrong, and you picked right.
I mean, I was happy with my prediction afterward. But
Yeah, like exactly my point. Like,
yeah,
like if you picked Volkanovski and you're like, yeah, he lost the position, but like he almost feels like he won.
yeah. I'm sure he doesn't believe in moral victories. You know,
No.
you don't become the best in the world by
No.
celebrating your losses, but he at the very least proved he belonged there, and again gave him more trouble than any top actual lightweights have. Makhachev in a long time. But Volkanovski against Holloway, and Holloway is someone who normally just overwhelms his opponents and then they go down and die. You mentioned some of the specifics, like him just using hand fighting to navigate and negate Holloway's reach advantage. Holloway's fights with Volkanovski were obviously incredibly frustrating for him because Max Holloway offensively is like, he's like a Gatling gun. He's like one of those miniguns that you see mounted on military helicopters where the barrel starts spinning and it spins up the speed and then the bullets start flying and like shit gets wrecked. Like Holloway in 3 fights with Volkanovski, like a lot of cage time, like never really the Gatling gun, he could never get it spun all the way up. You never saw him really get into Max Holloway flow mode where he's coming forward, switching stances, throwing like 7 strike combinations, and his opponents are just going down like in a hail of punches and kicks. He was never able to do it. And Volkanovski, it's because Volkanovski just blunted his rhythm perfectly with like low kicks, hand fighting, and takedown attempts. Like just the extent to which he has his opponents figured out. You know, and that's something I said about Robert Whittaker just a little while ago. With Volkanovski, it's even more so because even more than Whittaker, he's overcoming what should be physical disadvantages. And now, you know, he's fighting people in a higher skilled weight class. All of Volkanovski's opponents have been at least super elite offensive fighters, and he's given them so few chances to really, really use it on them. Like against Brian Ortega had like 5 seconds of offense in the whole fight. Like,
yeah.
And you think of even in losses, normally how many chances Ortega has in his fights, where you normally think he's one of those guys who really is never out of a fight. But with Volkanovski, he was never really in the fight. Just
yeah.
It's
amazing.
It's amazing, and because of that, even though Rodriguez might be the most dangerous opponent Volkanovski has faced in terms of quick strike finishing ability, I just think the opportunities will be few and far between. Like if you're fighting Alexander Volkanovski and your paths to victory require him to make a mistake, you're screwed. And that's why I'm leaning Volkanovski here as well. You picked Volkanovski via late stoppage. I could certainly see that wearing down Rodriguez, getting him tired, and just really taking advantage of him in the championship rounds. I'll say this makes it to a decision, and it's one of those fights that's shockingly entertaining for how lopsided it is. You know, speaking of Max Holloway, where he's had several of those fights. Yeah, give me Volkanovski by a pretty lopsided decision here. I wouldn't be surprised by something like a 49-45, where Rodriguez wins one of the first 2 rounds, but then Volkanovski puts a 10-8 round on him somewhere late. Like, give me something like that. But Volkanovski unifies the belts and reaffirms that he might be the best fighter on this whole planet. That has been the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 290, Volkanovski versus Rodriguez. I've been your host, Ben Duffy. He has been Keith Schillen. If this is your first time watching one of our previews, first of all, thank you. We hope you enjoyed it. We do our best to provide as good a mix of honest, in-depth analysis and story time and goofery as you'll find anywhere in this industry. Please do like, subscribe, give us a comment. Keith and I are both good about manning the comment section, and we'd love to hear from you. If you think any of our picks are completely off the wall, let us know, and if you're right, we'll give you full props afterwards. Most importantly, join us for the recap. We are live on the Sherdog YouTube page about 10 or 15 minutes after the main event, where Keith takes the driver's seat. We'll talk about all 14 of these fights in the reverse order of how we just did. We'll start from that incredible pair of title fights at the top, make our way all the way down to the first prelim, talking about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. Talking about what's next for some of the notable winners as well as losers, and talking to you guys, because the live comment section is open on the YouTube page that whole time. So we are taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends who join us and hang out after the fights, and we would love you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy these fights.